Back in 1912, British newspapers were buzzing with one bold claim: the first humans appeared in Britain, not Africa. It felt like history itself had been rewritten, and everyone bought into it. Crowds cheered, scientists raised their glasses, and the tiny village of Piltdown in Sussex suddenly became the spotlight for what was hailed as the greatest evolutionary discovery ever. It all happened thanks to this guy, Charles Dawson, a curious amateur archaeologist who was dreaming of making a name in science. He claimed he had found bone fragments of a transitional creature between apes and humans. Dawson teamed up with Arthur Smith Woodward, a respected geologist from the Natural History Museum, and together they assembled fragments of skulls, teeth, and even primitive tools. They unveiled their find, the Piltdown Man, to the Geological Society, and for decades everyone believed it. Textbooks even rewrote human evolution around it, and entire generations memorized it as pure truth. But here's the twist. In 1949, new technology to determine the precise age of objects came along, and things just didn't add up. Tests showed that the skull was only about 50,000 years old, not hundreds of thousands. Then came an even bigger shock. The skull and jaw didn't even belong to the same species. Someone had combined a human skull with the jaw of an ape, probably an orangutan. And even worse, they filed down the teeth to make them look more human, and stained the bones to match the surrounding gravel. A Frankenstein fossil and its creator managed to trick the entire world into believing they'd found a missing piece of humanity's puzzle. So Dawson went down in scientific history, but probably not the way he was hoping to. And he wasn't the only one. Some did it for money, others for fame. In the late 19th century Paris, museums were collecting ancient treasures like they were trading cards. When a stunning gold tiara, supposedly belonging to an ancient Scythian king, Ctesiphon, appeared on the market, the Louvre had to have it. It was breathtaking, detailed, majestic, fit for a ruler. The museum proudly paid a fortune and displayed it as a masterpiece of ancient craftsmanship. Then came the heartbreak. A few years later, an entrepreneurial goldsmith from Odessa read about the Louvre's glorious find and burst out laughing. He recognized the tiara because he made it with his own hands. It was a modern piece, a commission he created for local dealers, except they never told him they planned to pass it off as an ancient treasure. The Louvre was humiliated. Once again, the whole world believed in a beautiful lie, and the goldsmith who had just made the museum look ridiculous ended up famous in the world of art. The tiara still holds the Guinness World Record for the greatest goldsmith fraud of all time. Another story of a well-planned scientific hoax takes us to a quiet town of Cardiff, New York, a couple of decades before the Louvre incident. In 1869, workers digging a well struck something hard and enormous. They uncovered what looked like a petrified 10-foot-tall man lying in the earth. Crowds poured in from miles around to see it. Preachers called it proof of the biblical giants mentioned in Genesis. Scientists debated whether it was fossilized or divine. Within days, the Cardiff giant became a sensation. People paid good money to see it, 50 cents a ticket, which was a lot back then. Later, it turned out that a man named George Hull carved the mysterious giant from gypsum after an argument with a Methodist reverend. Hull just wanted to prove how easily you can fool people, especially religious believers, unlike himself. So he buried the fake giant, and it worked too well. Even after experts exposed the hoax, visitors didn't care. They kept coming because they wanted to believe. Over time, the giant changed ownership several times. You can now see it at the Fenimore Farm and Country Village Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Well, speaking of museums, you might have seen crystal skulls that glow under light, presented as sacred artifacts from Mesoamerican temples. Yes, that skull from an Indiana Jones movie with ancient Aztec powers or even extraterrestrial energy. So, museums displayed such skulls proudly until scientists at the British Museum and the Smithsonian decided to give them a closer look. And what they found shattered the myth. They found that the skulls were made with modern rotary tools and abrasives that ancient carvers didn't have. In other words, Someone in the 1800s or 1900s made them using modern machinery and fooled the world. They weren't messages from deities or some advanced creatures from space, just very fancy paperweights that tricked so many people into believing in some ancient superpowers. Well, let's jump several decades closer to the present day, shall we? In the 1960s, Yale University revealed what looked like a discovery that could rewrite world history: a 15th century map showing North America labeled Vinland. It meant Vikings had mapped America long before Columbus. The headlines were sensational. The idea was romantic: explorers crossing icy seas century before Europe even knew America existed. But something just didn't add up. The parchment was generally medieval, but the ink wasn't. Decades of testing revealed it contained titanium dioxide, a pigment invented in the 20th century. In 2021, Yale confirmed it. The Vinland map was a modern forgery, drawn over old parchment to make it look ancient. It wasn't proof of Viking genius, but rather of human cleverness on one side and the tendency to be easily persuaded on the other. And when we speak of persuasion, you don't have to try too hard when a really trustworthy source like National Geographic shares something, right? Well, in 1999, it presented what it thought was the ultimate discovery: a fossil that bridged the gap between dinosaurs and birds. It was called Archaeoraptor, and it was going to change everything we knew about evolution. The fossil came from China, and on first glance, it was perfect: a dinosaur tail, bird-like wings, and bones that seemed to tell the story of flight's evolution. But soon, paleontologists started whispering. The bones didn't quite line up. CT scans revealed the ugly truth. It was literally glued together from parts of different species. A dinosaur tail from one fossil, a bird body from another. Someone had Frankensteined the fossils to make a more valuable specimen. The embarrassment hit hard, especially for National Geographic, which had built an entire story around a fake the world liked to believe. Now, if you think scientific hoaxes are all in the past because of all the 20th century high-tech, here's a surprise for you. In 2020, the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. made a stunning confession. All 16 fragments of its prized Dead Sea Scroll collection were modern forgeries. They'd spent millions acquiring what they thought were sacred 2,000-year-old texts, only to learn they were made of ancient leather painted with modern ink. The forgery was so advanced that even experts were fooled at first. But after detailed forensic tests, it became clear the holy relics were anything but holy. It wasn't just about money, it was about faith. Thousands of visitors had stood in front of those glass cases, feeling awe, reverence, and connection, only to learn it was a show built on lies. And finally, it's time for one of the eeriest hoaxes of all. In 2000, a mummy surfaced in Pakistan, claiming to be a 26-year-old Persian princess, the daughter of Xerxes. They found her in a gilded sarcophagus, wrapped in golden robes. Her face was eerily well preserved. Archaeologists were stunned, but something about her looked wrong. CT scans, linguistic analysis, and radiocarbon dating revealed the horrifying truth. The mummy wasn't ancient at all. She was a modern woman, and someone likely took her life and then mummified her to sell as a fake relic. Well, yikes. The story went from exciting to tragic overnight and broke many hearts. What was supposed to be a royal miracle turned out to be a human crime and yet another lie. All these stories have one thing in common: hope. People want to believe. They want to touch the past, to find proof that connects them to something bigger. Whether it's scientists looking for the missing link, museums wanting fame, or believers searching for signs of faith, we all crave wonder. History is full of tricksters, and sometimes the best stories come from the fakes that fooled us all.
We're hearing more and more about mysterious objects falling from the sky. Weird metallic stuff barely missing houses and rolling over between farms. Just like in Argentina the other day. There wasn't any trail, and it didn't trigger any radar alerts. It was just a sudden thud that startled the locals. Before you knew it, everything was blocked off, with authorities surveilling the area. What's actually going on? And are we in danger of this happening to any of us? People in a small rural town in northern Argentina live a quiet life. For them, probably the most dramatic thing is when a cow wanders off. What they definitely didn't expect was a giant cylinder dropping down out of nowhere. The owner was definitely grateful that the thing didn't smash into his house. He called the police, if not to figure out what it was and what it was suddenly doing in his backyard, then at least to help him get rid of it. However, when officers arrived at the scene, they knew this job was above their pay grade. They had to call specialists, the kind who show up with protective gear and strange instruments that make beeping sounds. Before you can examine what it is, the standard procedure is to make sure nothing will go boom. Fallen space stuff can be like a shaken soda can full of leftover rocket fuel. One wrong poke and psht! That could cause serious trouble. After they ensured the object was safe to approach, the real mystery began to unravel. Right there in the dirt was a long black carbon fiber shell with dents along its side. It looked like a leftover part of a starship that had been chewed up and then spewed out by some scary space whale. As objects fall, their spin can increase dramatically. By the time they reach the ground, they can tumble like a fumbled football, which can reshape them and make them unrecognizable. Reports describe it as roughly 5.5 feet long and heavy enough to sink into the soil. It also appeared to be engineered with clean lines and a structured shape. What could it be? The most obvious idea was that it might have drifted down from orbit, maybe a leftover piece of some past launch, finally losing its battle with gravity. There are thousands of defunct satellites and rocket pieces still circling Earth. Even in space, there's still a bit of atmospheric drag nibbling at objects and stealing their speed. And once they slow down too much, they spiral back toward Earth. So an old satellite is a good guess. However, the shape is unusual. Usually, they're not round and not like this. Another plausible explanation might be that the strange thing came from an aircraft. Commercial airplanes sometimes lose items like panels, tires, or doors. In 2014, a Delta Boeing 757 had an unexpected adventure when it lost an upper wing panel mid-flight. While it may sound alarming, the problems with the wing did not affect the plane's ability to fly, and it landed safely. In July 2024, a United Airlines Boeing 757 taking off from Los Angeles lost a main landing gear wheel but continued to Denver and landed with no injuries. As you can see, weird things happen, but the Argentina object seems too unusual and way bigger. And if something this large had fallen off a plane mid-flight, there would almost certainly be reports later and a very worried pilot somewhere. It's also not unimaginable that the object came from some experimental project, perhaps a prototype that's not connected to any public mission. After all, not every innovative test gets announced. For example, research teams often conduct discrete trials to see how new materials or shapes perform during their descent. However, even such durable test shells are usually recognizable, while this tubular thingy was visually confusing and became a genuine mystery, at least for a while. Until they discovered marking. Almost everything made to fly is marked in some way, whether it's with a stamped code, a painted line, or a laser-etched ID. Unless it's meant to stay a secret, any kind of flying uses expensive technology. And even if you can't reuse it, you might still want to examine it and learn from it. Usually, each part has a mark on it, because it comes from different factories or locations. Even old space debris typically provides some clue, allowing you to play detective with familiar shapes used at the time. You're likely to find a fragment that matches some blueprint. And this is what may have solved this particular mystery. One of the valves had a tiny serial number, and that exact code appears on the public list of space debris incidents. Based on the list, this mystery tube is believed to be a piece of the Jielong 3A Chinese Smart Dragon rocket, which was launched from a barge in the Yellow Sea. That doesn't make the origin official, as China has not publicly confirmed anything. Funny enough, a similar chunk of suspected Geelong 3 debris turned up in Australia around the same time. That's a bit anticlimactic. Another famous case happened in Spain's Murcia region in 2015. Just like in South America, farmers found something unidentified. Except Spaniards got bowling balls instead of something cylindrical. This also brought people in special suits. Experts later suggested it was a high-pressure tank used for launch, but no one ever figured out whose. The same thing happened in Namibia in 2011. Journalists literally dubbed it the mysterious space ball. Villagers discovered a scorched, hollow metal orb sitting out in the open, looking like it had rolled straight out of a factory. Its surface was rough, and the whole thing appeared to be made from two halves welded together. Police got involved to check whether it was explosive, and authorities later tested it, confirming it was made from space-grade alloy and nothing more. No agency claimed it, no mission matched it. Locals reported hearing a series of small explosions a few days before the discovery, and officials noted that similar spheres had appeared in Australia and Central America over the last couple of decades. It also happened in Vietnam, where not one, but 3 hefty balls dropped in 3 separate locations. They were of different sizes and looked like giant marbles, with the largest one weighing 100 pounds. The investigators think the globes might be leftovers from a botched satellite launch. The mild damage suggested they fell from a relatively low altitude. Authorities are on the same page, saying it's likely something that originated from orbit, but they can't tie it to any specific mission. In India, Gujarat villagers also found huge pool balls. All these falling objects point to a much bigger issue. The space around Earth is getting really cluttered. Over the decades, low Earth orbit has begun to resemble a storage room that nobody has cleaned out. While most of the debris burns up when it re-enters the atmosphere, as you can see, heavier fragments can survive the fall and land somewhere on Earth. No wonder nobody wants to take the responsibility. It would be like admitting you left garbage on a highway that caused a traffic accident, but it gets even worse on a much bigger scale. Researchers warn of a phenomenon known as the Kessler syndrome. That's the nightmare scenario where one collision causes another and another and another, until orbit basically turns into a shooting gallery of high-speed chunks of metal. The idea is that one collision can trigger a runaway chain reaction, turning orbit into a fast-moving cloud of debris. If that ever really kicked off, certain orbits could become too dangerous to use. Earth could become essentially fenced off by the junk we have created ourselves. It could lead to a future where satellites and starships avoid cosmic debris, like in a video game. It's not all that dire, as scientists are well aware of the issue and are working on ways to address it. Right now, some scientists are probably tossing around ideas like using nets, capture missions, and even laser nudging. Cleaning out our orbit should be a priority. We definitely don't want future visitors from distant galaxies avoiding us just because they don't feel like dodging our messy driveway full of space litter. They finally did it. After 300 years of searching, archaeologists pinned down the location of the lost land of the white jaguar, the city of Maya hidden in the wild jungles of Mexico. It all kicked off back in the 1500s with the Lacandon Maya. These guys were some super tough survivors who just didn't quit. When their main capital, Lacamtun, fell to the Spanish in 1586, most people would have called it game over. But not the Lacandon. Nope, they packed up, headed deeper into the rainforest, and built their last stronghold, Sacbalan. It was a hidden fortress of stone temples, twisty jungle trails, and howler monkeys acting like noisy little guards. For over 100 years, the Lacandon managed to keep their traditions alive there, far from European control. Then, in 1695, history came crashing in. A Spanish friar named Diego de Ribas stumbled into Sacbalan. And yeah, that was basically the beginning of the end. Soon after, the Spanish took over. By 1721, the Maya had abandoned Sacbalan. The jungle didn't waste time. It swallowed the place whole, with roots tearing into walls and vines smothering plazas. The city didn't just disappear, it got eaten alive. For the next 300 years, Sac Balan turned into more of a myth than a memory. A name archaeologists and explorers would whisper, secretly hoping to find it one day. Plenty of expeditions tried to track it down, but the rainforest is sneaky. Every path looks identical, maps fall apart in the humidity, and even GPS can't cut through the thick green ceiling. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, except the haystack was alive, covered in thorns, and yeah, crawling with jaguars that would happily make you lunch. So how did the scientists crack the mystery? One word: a letter from the 17th century. The letter by Diego de Ribas described all the routes, rivers, and trails leading to Sac Balan. It showed in every detail the journey of the soldiers who walked 4 days to the Lakuntun River after leaving Sac Balan. Then they sailed for 2 days and arrived at the church El Encuentro de Cristo, left their canoes, and continued on foot to Lake Petén Itzá in Guatemala. This was already detailed enough, but the scientists needed to pinpoint the exact location with geographic information systems. They took into account vegetation layers and how much each person was carrying to map an approximate range where Sac Balan should be. They fed this information to GIS and calculated where the city should be. And bingo, it worked. Archaeologists traveled through the jungle and found stone temples rising like broken teeth from the earth. There were also some tools and ceramics, and a Spanish church right in the middle of the ruins. The discovery isn't just about cool ruins, it rewrites history. For decades, people assumed the Lacandons simply scattered after Lakamtun fell, but Sac Balan proves they regrouped, fought, and preserved their culture for over a century more. It's like discovering the final chapter of a book we thought ended too soon. There's also irony here. The Spanish friar who revealed Sac Balan helped doom it. Yet his letter, centuries later, also helped save its memory. Today, the ruins sit inside a biosphere reserve, protected by the same jungle that once hid them. Tourists can't just waltz in. It's raw, tangled, alive. The city breathes again, but on its own terms. Scientists just uncovered another lost city, buried under the thick jungles of Mexico. It had been hiding there for 600 years. The place is called Gengola, and it's massive, about 360 hectares with more than 1,100 buildings, 2.5 miles of defensive walls, its own network of roads, and a super organized city plan. Because it was so deep in the jungle, you'd never realize how huge it really was unless you spent years hiking through it. But modern tech swooped in to save the day, using LiDAR, a kind of laser scanning tool. Researchers flew over the site, and in just 2 hours, they had a full 3D map of the entire city. Gengola was built sometime between 1350 and 1521, back in pre-Columbian times, and it used to be buzzing with life. It was a major hub for the Zapotec people, who had been around in the region since about 600 BCE. Families there lived in homes with big central patios surrounded by rooms, and as they got new members, they just add more rooms and stretch their houses out. They even used the mountains around them as natural walls and channeled mountain water for drainage. A lot of their buildings are still standing, which is wild considering how much time has passed. By the late 1400s, the Zapotec were real powerhouses along the Pacific coast. They even fought off the Aztecs, who were constantly trying to expand. At Gengola, they survived a brutal 7-month siege. But even though hiding in the mountains kept them safe, it wasn't perfect. They didn't have enough fresh water or farmland to feed everyone. Just 12 miles away, the smaller city of Tehuantepec had what they needed. So the Zapotec moved there right before the Spanish arrived in 1521. What the scientists have seen so far is just scratching the surface. That LiDAR scan revealed more than 1,000 buildings, and archaeologists are planning years of research to figure it all out. Instead of digging everything up and risking damage, they'll use advanced scanning tech to keep studying the city safely. Alright, now let's hop across the world to Egypt, where archaeologists stumbled on a whole lost city called Imet, tucked away in the eastern Nile Delta. The place was buried under layers of mud, water, and time, hiding in a swamp that's been shifting and changing for thousands of years. Scientists first noticed it from way up high in faint little clusters of mud brick foundations in satellite images. The shapes looked shaky and ghost-like, but too neat to be natural. So they followed the patterns down on the ground, started digging, and the city started coming back to life. They found multi-story tower houses, basically mini skyscrapers of the ancient world. They had multiple floors, thick foundations, and could handle some serious weight. That kind of vertical living is super rare in Egypt, especially outside the Nile Delta. It showed that people in Imet weren't just spreading across the land, but stacking upward, which means the city was packed, carefully planned, and way more urban than anyone thought for that time. And it wasn't just fancy housing either. Archaeologists also uncovered a grain processing center with paved work areas, animal pens, and organized spaces for food production. Clearly, this was a city with a real economy running behind it. Not far from there, they spotted a ceremonial road that once led to a temple for Wadjet, Imet's patron deity. But later on, other buildings got plunked down over the road, which shows that Wadjet's worship faded over time. Still, the ruins coughed up some amazing relics, a green faience little funerary figurine, and a stela showing Harpocrates perched on crocodiles and gripping snakes. He was the Greek spin on Horus, deity of silence, secrets, and the newborn sun. And there was even a bronze sistrum, an ancient Egyptian musical instrument decorated with twin heads of Hathor. Turns out, Imet was active from around the 4th century BCE onward, stretching from Egypt's late period into the Roman era. Its location along trade routes made it a magnet for merchants and pilgrims visiting Wadjet's temple. So it wasn't just hanging on, it was thriving, connecting, trading, and adapting with the times. And this isn't just another dusty ruin. Imet is giving us a window into everyday life, religion, and urban planning in the Delta, which we've always known way less about compared to the big pyramids and tombs. On Mars, nothing is ordinary. That's why a single rock spotted by NASA's Perseverance rover in Jezero Crater has drawn everyone's attention. Its surface is covered with tiny spheres. This texture is both bizarre and weirdly, painfully familiar. Haven't we seen something similar on Earth? Yes, we have. Does it mean there's a mysterious connection between Earth and the Red Planet? NASA's Perseverance rover has been busy exploring Mars, and on August 5, 2025, it spotted something unusual. A rock that looks like it came straight out of a medieval armory. It looks like a knight's helmet forgotten after a battle. Or maybe it's the hat of a witch that crash-landed on the Red Planet. Researchers officially nicknamed the rock Horniflya. It has a dome-shaped top with a pointed tip and a rim that flares out. Its surface is rough and covered with tiny bumps. But the coolest thing is that the rock isn't just lumpy. It's made up almost entirely of little round spheres. Imagine bubble wrap that someone balled up and spray-painted Mars red. Here you go. Geologists aren't too impressed by the rock's shape, but its composition makes them raise their eyebrows. Such little spheres could have formed in a few days. Chemical weathering, volcanic activity, or if rock vaporized by a meteorite cooled down and condensed. On Earth, rocks with similar textures sometimes come from processes involving water, and this is one of the reasons why everyone is so excited now. If underground waters had a hand in shaping the rock, it could mean there was a lot of water on Mars in the past. And water means life. Now, another cool thing about this helmet is that it's a floating rock. The term means that it looks completely different from those around it. Basically, this rock doesn't belong to the area where the rover found it. The best guess is that it was launched from another location. Maybe it was a volcanic eruption, or more likely, an asteroid smacked into the Martian surface and flung it across the landscape. Interestingly, this isn't the first bubble rock Perseverance has seen. Back in March 2025, it found another sphere-covered rock, and some of the tiny balls had holes in them. If you look closely at Horniflya, you can see a bunch of those too. That might mean they're what geologists call ooids, small spherical layered grains. On Earth, ooids form when calcium carbonate builds up layer by layer in shallow water. Picture a warm, shallow sea near the equator. The water is a little choppy and waves are constantly moving things around. That's the kind of place ooids are born. They grow like pearls in oysters. An ooid starts small, usually with a tiny grain of sand or some other speck. The water is overloaded with calcium carbonate, so every time the waves move that grain around, a new layer builds up. Over time, the layers pile on and you've got yourself a neat little ball. Sometimes the center isn't as tough as the layers surrounding it. That's why the core can dissolve or even disappear completely, leaving behind a hole. If those Martian spheres formed in the same way, this might be the reason why they have those tiny cavities inside them. But there's another possibility. On Earth, the other way of ooid formation is biological. In other words, they sometimes start with the remains of tiny living organisms. Could the ooids on the red planet have formed in the same way? Of course. This doesn't mean we can slap a "Life Found on Mars" headline on it just yet. But the fact that these holes exist is a clue that hints that Mars might have had the right kind of conditions for life. Well, maybe not seashells and oysters, but definitely something worth paying attention to. Weird Earth-like formations aren't the only intriguing things found on Mars. In March 2025, NASA's Perseverance rover spotted something that looked like a bunch of tiny spider eggs. That something was made up of hundreds of little round balls stuck together. It was just sitting there on a hill called Witch Hazel, near the edge of Jezero crater. On closer inspection, it turned out to be a weirdly shaped rock with a bit of red Martian dust on it. Yeah, sadly, or luckily, those weren't Martian spider eggs. Even so, the formation really stood out from everything else around it. The Perseverance team named the weird rock St. Paul's Bay. It's a floating rock too, just like Horniflya. Something once moved this rock from its original spot. One theory claims that it could have been created when a meteorite smashed into Mars. The powerful impact must have blasted rocks into the air. Then, those bits could have cooled down and formed those tiny balls. If that's true, the rock might have come from really far away. Another cool find occurred in April 2023 when NASA's Curiosity rover took a little break from searching for signs of ancient water on Mars and stumbled upon a travel book. Later, scientists figured out that it wasn't really a book, just a rock, but it does look like a little hardcover with a page frozen mid-turn. This book rock is tiny, measuring only about 1 inch wide. In February 2022, the Curiosity rover spotted something that could only be described as a tiny flower made of minerals. It looked like little coral branches, but it was actually a mineral deposit, pretty rare to see in a flower-like shape. Most of these kinds of deposits form when ancient water mixes with rocks on the Martian surface, so they're not exactly new to scientists. But that one was unique, since it looked like a tiny plant or flower. In January 2023, the University of Arizona shared another bizarre image, a rock formation on Mars that looked like the face of a giant teddy bear. It had 2 distinct beady eyes, a button nose, and an upturned mouth. It was captured by NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which was orbiting the red planet at the time. Scientists from the University of Arizona explained that the teddy bear face was likely just a natural formation, like a broken up hill or mound in the center of an ancient crater. But let's get back to Horniflya. Perseverance snapped that strange bumpy rock photo during its 234th week on Mars, and NASA even picked it as the rover's best shot of the week. Of course, the rover's main job isn't collecting cool-looking rocks. Perseverance was launched on July 30th, 2020 with a big goal: to search for traces of ancient microbial life and figure out if Mars was ever truly habitable. That mission is connected directly to NASA's Artemis program. It's focused on setting up a long-term base on the Moon. The idea is that such colonies on Earth's natural satellite will help manage and support the first astronaut landing on Mars. At the same time, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk has his own ideas. He wants to send uncrewed missions to Mars as soon as the end of 2026. In the meantime, Perseverance has been busy. Its first assignment was exploring Jezero Crater, a site chosen because it once held water. After 3 years of work, the rover wrapped up its full survey of the crater. It happened in December 2024. NASA explained why this mattered. If Mars really went through long wet periods, Jezero's lake beds or shorelines could be some of the best places to look for fossilized signs of past life. Perseverance isn't alone either. 4 other rovers have reached Mars over the years. The very first, Sojourner, landed in July 1997. Then came Opportunity, which was expected to last just 3 months, but ended up operating for an incredible 15 years, until 2018. As for the bubbly rocks, scientists want to know more than just what they're made of. They're curious about where those rocks originally formed, and whether they lie in layers that could reveal how different materials build up over time. Studying their unusual makeup could tell researchers a lot about Mars's inner processes and how its environment shaped the planet's surface over billions of years. And maybe we could finally find out if there was life on the red planet. Drones, robots, and a heart. It's not the title of a new animated series. These are things that Leonardo da Vinci worked on more than 500 years ago. And today, scientists use these works of the famous artist to develop modern technologies. Da Vinci knew something about the heart that modern doctors have only discovered recently. How is this possible? He was a genius, that's how. We'll look at the famous works of the inventor, but only those that you've probably never heard of. For a long time, scientists have been trying to figure out the function of the mysterious thing that is located in the human heart. This is a small muscular structure that looks like a fork in a road, or a tree root that goes deep down into the ground. It's called trabeculae. Doctors realized its function only recently, but Leonardo da Vinci noticed these tiny roots more than 500 years ago. And his observations inspired scientists to study this part of the heart in 2020. Specialists using MRI scans, computer models, and mathematical formulas to determine what the trabeculae are. And Leonardo da Vinci just drew it in his notebook after carefully examining a dissected human heart. In his diaries, he added thin, lacy lines like snowflakes to the image of the heart. Those snowflakes were the trabeculae. The famous scientist suggested that this network was necessary to preserve the heat inside small vessels around the beating heart. The only thing Da Vinci didn't realize was how much this network affected human health. Modern scientists have studied the data of more than 18,000 people and found out that the structure of the trabeculae affect the functioning of the heart and determine the risk of developing cardiovascular diseases. And the most interesting thing is that the structure of these tiny branches is directly related to the human genetic code. That is, DNA dictates the structure of the trabeculae of your heart. But why is it important? Studying the roots of a tree helps to better understand the tree itself and how it withstands storms. The same goes for the trabeculae. These structures show the problem with the heart that a person needs to prepare for. Also, these tiny branches help to better figure out how the heart works. Of course, Leonardo da Vinci hardly knew how to conduct such research, but just imagine what would happen if such scientists lived today. Do you think humanity would be more advanced? Probably yes. And not only in medicine, but also in robotics. Yes, Leonardo da Vinci managed to invent a robot, and it wasn't just any robot. It was a big, mechanical lion. It could move, raise its head, and open its chest, which contained lilies. It was a real Renaissance steampunk. Only da Vinci didn't use steam engines. He used mechanics and physics. It was not just an invention, but also a diplomatic symbol, an innovation during the Renaissance. You've probably heard of the influential and powerful Medici family. In 1494, they were expelled from Florence for a number of reasons. And of course, they were eager to return to power. But for this, the Medici needed to enlist the support of the French crown. One of the Medici family members was Giovanni de' Medici. He asked da Vinci to make a beautiful gift for King Francis I that would flatter His Majesty. The famous inventor came up with the idea to create a mechanical lion. And of course, such a gift made a great impression on the people of the 16th century. Just imagine how cool it looked 500 years ago. Everyone around gives some beautiful paintings, silks, diamonds, and luxury items to the king. And then, a robotic lion appears with a lily on its chest. It would be interesting to see the reactions of those who saw this robot. Interestingly, the word robot didn't even exist at that time. Unfortunately, we haven't preserved the drawings of that lion, and of course, we don't have the original invention. But we found fragments of its appearance in the Madrid Da Vinci Codex, and in some other surviving recordings by other Renaissance artists. Some of them said that the lion could roar and move independently for a long distance, but obviously, this was an exaggeration. In the 16th century, similar inventions used heavy weights and the flow of water to create movement. But Leonardo da Vinci used complex gears, similar to the clockwork of that time, coil springs, and other parts. It was a delicate piece of work that resembled Leonardo's robot, another invention made by this brilliant scientist that looked like a knight. For the knight, da Vinci created a complex system of arm articulation and torso rotation to accurately reproduce human movements. To create the robotic lion, da Vinci studied the anatomy of this animal. After years of observation and study of internal organs and joints, he used all these to create his masterpiece. In fact, it was an early prototype of modern robotics. All this was long before artificial intelligence, lasers, microchips, and other technologies. At that time, such machines were created not to increase productivity, but to impress and surprise people. Perhaps da Vinci would have been able to shock the public if he had invented a real flying machine. No, not that famous hang glider prototype, but the prototype of a modern drone. Almost all modern drones have one common problem that scientists around the world are trying to solve. And the solution to this problem was proposed by da Vinci more than 500 years ago. He drew an image of an aerial screw that resembles an ancient descendant of the modern drone. It had one big rotating screw in the middle, instead of multiple propellers. And it seems that this screw had helped scientists a lot recently. The most urgent problem of drones today is their noise. Drones are everywhere. They make cool nature videos, shoot movies and TV series, rescue people stuck in mountains and other difficult places, deliver things, water crops, and do a lot more. And all this is accompanied by noise, which irritates the human ear. All of those small propellers emit high-frequency sinusoidal sounds that bounce off the ground, making them even louder and longer-lasting. So, scientists began to look for a solution to this problem. For example, they've developed a special acoustic metamaterial that can mute sound by 94%. This material should be installed under the drone's fans, blocking the sound wave going to the ground. They probably came up with a few more solutions, but they also decided to try using the drone design developed in the 15th century by Leonardo da Vinci as an experiment. They didn't reconstruct the exact model of the ancient flying machine, but they uploaded all the parameters of this invention into a computer and generated the flight conditions to create a simulation where the aerial screw would work. The scientists were surprised. this thing actually succeeded. It's easy to imagine how it works. The aerial screw produces rotational movements to create lift, that is, to fly. And it seems that in 2025, this is a rather cumbersome invention. Modern drones with propellers are much more mobile and faster, but the engineers wanted to find out the aeroacoustic noise characteristics and mechanical power of this invention and compare them with today's propellers. Computer simulations showed the aerial screw emitted much less noise and provided higher mechanical power. How is this possible? Thanks to the laws of physics. The surface area of the aerial screw is larger than that of modern propellers. It rotates more slowly, but it creates the same lifting force. This means it consumes less energy. The noise from its wide surface has a lower frequency. The screw releases air vortices along with the sounds, and the sound waves inside the vortices dissipate faster. So it can really help scientists solve the noise problem of modern drones. What does this experiment tell us? That old ideas just get recycled as new ones. In the case of Leonardo da Vinci, this is exactly the case. What do you think? How many more Renaissance superstar inventions can be used for modern technology? It would be cool to create a high-tech company that would specialize in inventions based on Da Vinci's drawings. What would you like to turn into reality?
Once upon a time, I searched through the jungle, following a map poorly drawn on a piece of cloth. After days of walking, I reached an ancient Mayan temple. As soon as I stepped in, a strange noise echoed. I turned to leave, but suddenly the floor cracked beneath my feet. I fell into a 1600-year-old tomb. Finally, I got lucky. That day, I walked out with shiny jades, carved seashells, a creepy afterlife mask, and a curse that's been haunting me ever since. Well, okay, maybe it didn't happen exactly like that. Or maybe it didn't happen to me. Sadly, real-life archaeology is not like Indiana Jones movies. However, the findings can be as exciting and important, especially in Belize, where archaeologists just found the first identifiable ruler's tomb in the lost Mayan city of Caracol after 40 years of digging. A team of archaeologists finally unsealed a hidden chamber, buried deep beneath a structure they'd already studied. And inside that tomb, which is indeed around 1600 years old, was Tikab Shak, the first known king of Caracol. His name is commonly interpreted as Tree Branch Rain Deity, which is poetic and incredibly awesome. King Shak was believed to be a Mayan deity in control of rain, thunder, and lightning. According to folklore, he used axes to strike rain-bearing snakes in the sky to make the rain fall. The buried king is considered to be the dynasty founder. The royal dynasty he founded lasted more than 460 years. And judging by what was buried with him, we can assume that King Shak was greatly celebrated. His tomb had jade beads, carved bones, seashell jewelry, and ritual pottery vessels. One of those vessels shows Ekchua, the Maya deity of trade, receiving offerings. Others showed bound prisoners. Archaeologists could tell they had found some high royalty when they noticed a considerable presence of red cinnabar in the tomb, a rare and expensive material from the Mayan world. Then there's a jade mosaic mask, pieced together like a puzzle to cover the king's face in brilliant green. Jade wasn't used just because it was shiny. It was sacred and symbolically associated with life and demise. Polished jade glistens like it's been dipped in water, cool at first, but quickly warming in your hand. To the ancient Maya, this lifelike quality made jade a living, breathing substance. And for this reason, it possessed high religious and spiritual importance. The Maya associated it with the breath of life, with royalty, and with eternity. Covering someone's face in jade showed just how high-ranking that person was. King Shak's mask has yet to be examined properly, but another famous mask of King Pakal was made of over 346 green jade stone fragments. That's a lot of painstaking work. But maybe the most symbolically fascinating thing about this king was that he was old. Not just lived a good life old, toothless old. To us, that means he didn't clean his teeth properly, because, no, You don't usually lose teeth just from getting old, as long as you maintain good oral hygiene and dental care. On the other hand, according to Maya legends, toothless elders were believed to have spiritual powers. Rulers and shamans mediated between realms, and aged or underworld deities were often shown as toothless in art. Now, speaking of realms, Mayan cosmology divided the universe into 3 layers. The upper world was where the deities lived. The middle world was where humans lived. It was carried on the back of a giant turtle or caiman, and surrounded by a primordial sea. Beneath it was the underworld, known as Xibalba, a dark and complex realm of spirits and ancestors. And certain people, especially rulers, shamans, and elders, were believed to move between these worlds. This king was a ruler, had a deity-like name, and was a toothless elder. Boy, his power level must have been off the charts. But that's not all. Here's the eerie part. The tomb was buried beneath another tomb, which was discovered all the way back in 1993. Archaeologists were investigating a different burial when they realized there was another chamber hidden beneath it, an interesting hiding place. Remarkably, it worked. For more than 1,600 years, no one found him. This makes Tekhab Shak's tomb the first ever discovered at Karakol that can be definitely linked to a known ruler, thanks to hieroglyphs, burial context, and artifacts. Now, if you're not a geography or history buff, you've probably never heard of Karakol. Today, it's a remote ruin deep in the jungles of western Belize. But around 16 centuries ago, Karakol was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the entire Maya world. At its peak, it covered over 77 square miles, which, for reference, is larger than modern-day Belize City. Its population was around 100,000 people. That's more than most cities in Europe had at that time. And it wasn't just big, it was advanced. Karakol had pyramids, ball courts, palaces, reservoirs, and a very complex road system. Stuff like limestone superhighways stretching miles through the jungle. Past excavations also turned up arrowheads, drills, spindle whorls, figurines, and everyday tools. King Shak's tomb was one of the 3 major tombs found in the northeast Acropolis. That's near Kana, the central archaeological complex at Karakol, and one of the tallest human-made buildings in all of Belize, even today. It reaches an imposing 141 feet high and contains multiple levels of elite residences and temples. But even with that size, finding tombs isn't easy at all. Most have already been looted. We don't know what else can be hidden there, and in some places, it's too risky to dig up without causing damage. That's why it took researchers decades to finally find something untouched. However, they were able to report over 850 burials and 175 tombs at Karakol over their 4-decade-long project. One of the earliest tombs, dating to around 350 CE, was a cremation burial containing ritual artifacts such as obsidian blades, atlatl spear points, and ceramic styles associated with central Mexico. So, if you're an archaeologist, this city seems to be an old historical gold mine. And old historical gold mines often come with warnings. For one thing, it's keep out, the ceiling might fall on you. Besides, even though scientists are excited about this discovery, if the king can really walk between realms, he's probably annoyed by all this. So what happens now that the king's eternal rest has been disturbed? Well, by opening and stepping into the tomb of Tekhab Shak, archaeologists basically stepped into a sealed sacred place. Maya tombs weren't just holes in the ground with a fancy coffin. They were sealed like cosmic vaults, locked up with stone, soil, and sometimes elaborate closing rituals. The goal was to mark the end of their use and protect what was inside. Archaeology at Karakol and other Maya cities shows this in action. Thick ceiling layers, termination offerings, and carefully placed debris, all saying, "This place is done, keep out." Today's archaeologists still treat them that way, working under Belizean laws and cultural protocols, making sure they explore with respect for what these spaces meant to the people who built them. However, it's eerie to think about mythology and whether King Shak is going to haunt the archaeologists. I guess we'll see. They shouldn't be afraid because he's old and has no teeth. Maybe he will annoy them with rain. He's named after a rain deity, after all, and we still don't know about his true power level. The Mayans were a fascinating civilization, and their structures are still among the most mysterious ones you can find. Despite being isolated from the known world, they also built pyramids without cranes, mapped stars without telescopes, and knew how to bury a king. Caracol is full of secrets. A hidden tomb under another tomb, a toothless king with a scary-looking mask and a deity's name? Almost unbelievable. And, amazingly, there is still stuff being found. So maybe it's not too late for me after all. But first, let's see the aftermath of this curse, huh? Once upon a time, there was a lighthouse so tall that you could spot its beam from 30 miles away. A mysterious tower that was the symbol of wealth and engineering genius. Made with stones so giant and heavy that it still makes us gasp. How did they do that? It has survived earthquakes, one after another, until it finally crumbled in the 14th century. Fast forward to today, and archaeologists have just hauled 22 of its colossal blocks off the seafloor. They're putting the tower back together, to be once again admired and explored, but not how you might imagine. The Lighthouse of Alexandria wasn't just a lighthouse, it was the lighthouse of ancient civilizations, one of the longest-standing world wonders. Built around 280 BCE, on a tiny island called Pharos, it reached about 330 feet up in the sky. For comparison, that's taller than the Statue of Liberty or Big Ben. Now keep in mind that this was before cranes, steel beams, or gym enthusiasts, and it becomes awe-inspiring. For sailors, spotting that gleaming tower was like finally seeing your exit sign after hours of driving on the world's most dangerous highway. The lighthouse was a sight for sore eyes, because legend says the waters around Pharos were tricky, full of hidden reefs that could smash ships to pieces. Old sources claim it took about 12 years to build, with the price tag being around 800 Athenian talents of silver, which is an ancient unit of weight close to 57 pounds. That means someone had to haul chests holding 23 tons of coins, without a forklift, most likely across the sea. Wow! The lighthouse was so impressive that the word Pharos ended up being used for lighthouses in a bunch of different languages. The structure had a cool three-tier design. It was square at the bottom, octagonal in the middle, and cylindrical on top. On its top, it had a statue, most likely of Zeus or Poseidon. The lighthouse's white limestone exterior was polished with a sun-catching plaster, so it gleamed like a beacon even without fire. At night, things were different. Wood was hard to come by in Egypt, so the fire on top may have been fed with bundles of papyrus roots or even naphtha for a brighter flame. Whatever the fuel, its glow was boosted by a massive polished bronze mirror. Now, bronze mirrors were common back then. It wasn't until the Renaissance, way long after the Pharos had crumbled, that glass-coated mirrors became standard in European lighthouses. During the day, the same mirror could reflect sunlight, and the tower's bright white silhouette, along with the smoke curling up from the fire, would help sailors find their way. Alexandria was one of the biggest ports in the ancient world, filled with merchants, travelers, and messengers, and the lighthouse was its landmark. Now, fun fact, if you're a fan of the Song of Ice and Fire universe, it certainly popped into your mind when reading about the High Tower of Old Town. Some fans speculate that not just the fictional lighthouse, but also the city itself, was directly inspired by Alexandria. And George R.R. Martin's love for ancient wonders doesn't stop there. There's also the Titan of Bravos, and the beloved author confirmed the intentional parallel to the imposing Colossus of Rhodes. For over 1,600 years, the lighthouse stood high against time, storms, wars, and intrigues, just like in the Game of Thrones. But it was finally defeated by nature itself. Sadly, a few major earthquakes during the 14th century brought it down, scattering its massive stones across the seabed. For over 5 centuries, the remains of the lighthouse just sat there under the waves, basically turning into an underwater rock garden. Divers knew about them, but hauling up 60-ton blocks from the sea is a job for a superhero or a super powerful crane. And, until recently, it was a lot safer to leave them where they were. Alexandria is still, to this day, a busy harbor and isn't exactly the easiest place for delicate archaeology. In the 1990s, archaeologists started mapping the whole area around Pharos Island. What they found was precision-cut limestone and granite blocks, some still showing carved edges. Over time, more than 100 massive pieces were cataloged, including chunks of columns, statues, and giant building blocks that could only have come from the lighthouse. Finally, in 2025, Egyptian and French teams joined up and brought that super crane along with a team of divers. In a carefully planned operation, they brought up 22 giant slabs from the seabed. There were parts like door lintels, threshold slabs, and a mysterious pylon, speculated to be some kind of monument. Some of those blocks weigh 70 to 80 tons, which is the weight of 20 African elephants. Those giant boulders are on dry land for the first time in over 600 years. But what happens now? Are researchers really about to rebuild the lighthouse like a giant Lego set? Not quite. You can't just stack century-old blocks like that. For starters, no one's 100% sure what the Lighthouse of Alexandria really looked like. Yeah, we've got drawings and clues, most famously, the tiny images stamped into Roman coins from Alexandria. But they're more like an artist's quick sketch, not quite the blueprints for recreating something down to the last detail. And then there's the missing pieces problem. Those recovered stones are just a fraction of the original structure. Over the centuries, much of the lighthouse's material was repurposed. In fact, the spot where the lighthouse used to stand is now home to the citadel of Qaitbay, a fortress built right on its old foundations. The fort is not just a symbol of the past, but also a tourist attraction and a recognizable Alexandrian landmark. So, no, Alexandria isn't about to get its legendary tower back. At least not in that way. Instead, these newly recovered stoneworks are headed for conservation labs to be studied. Specialists will clean, stabilize, and document every carved groove and chisel mark. Later, they're likely to head to a museum. After all, it's part of the national treasure. However, that's not the end of the story. We still have the technology on our side that promises a fully recreated and explorable lighthouse, just like it was all those centuries ago. The entire endeavor is called the Pharos Project, and its mission is to turn those hauled massive stones, lintels, thresholds, base slabs, and even a mystery pylon into a complete walk-through digital twin of the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Each piece is getting high-resolution 3D scanning, joining more than 100 fragments already recorded underwater. The goal isn't just a research. The Pharos Project aims to bring back the lighthouse's original look and feel and turn it into a museum. 330-foot-tall structures often have a lot of stairs, and virtual reality is going to be far less painful for my old feet. Museum visitors could walk around its base in augmented reality, while researchers could use the model to test new theories about its structure and function. Hopefully, we'll be able to customize our own atmosphere, dim the lights, and examine the walls just like in a video game. Maybe they'll render pigeons and seagulls to make it even more authentic. We still don't have many details, but the entire thing is being recorded and will be made into a documentary. While we don't have booths to time travel, talented designers can bring the past back to the present. They just need the correct concept art. Sure, nowadays you can recreate almost everything in 3D, but the point here is the authenticity, to put it back together exactly how it was. This is what the Project Pharos wants to achieve. Maybe one day, every ancient world wonder will end up being recreated in a similar way. But there's no reason to stop there. Virtual tourism can save time and money, and while nothing can replace the real experience, visiting authentic locations recreated in virtual reality may be the next best option. Locals are already excited. The citadel of Qaitbay is already drawing people, but now Alexandria is about to get the first digital tourist attraction. Soon, anyone with a VR headset can stand on top of this historic wonder, squint while watching the sunset, and finally answer the burning question: is it possible to get exhausted while climbing virtual stairs? And can I customize the soundtrack? Ooh.
In 1969, two brothers went fishing on the Altamaha River in the Clark's Bluff area. They cast their fishing rods, ready to wait for some fish to bite their bait, but at that moment, they saw something strange. At first, they thought it was a sturgeon, but then they saw that the length of this sturgeon was about 13 feet, almost as tall as two basketball players. Of course, such a size didn't frighten the brothers because some species of sturgeon can reach a length of 24 feet, which is about 3.5 basketball players. Something else surprised them. The face of this creature resembled that of an alligator. The tail was horizontal. It had a triangular crest along its upper body and sharp metal-colored teeth protruding from its mouth. A creature that looked like a dinosaur was quite an unusual phenomenon for the time when Steven Spielberg was an aspiring young director and didn't even think about creating Jurassic Park. So, on that day in 1969, two brothers saw something elusive, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. They saw a creature that had been the subject of stories for centuries, a creature that is being searched for even today. They met Altamaha. This is a famous and narrow circles monster that lives near the mouth of the Altamaha River in southeastern Georgia. People from the Lower Muskogee Creek tribe talked about it long before the British colonization. In ancient times, there were legends about a snake-like lizard that bellowed and hissed. So this monster has already been elusive for several centuries. But do you know what distinguishes Altamaha from Nessie, Chupacabra, and others? Yes, there are no bad quality photos or videos of Altamaha, but there's a huge amount of evidence from different periods. For the locals, Altamaha is so real that one artist created a detailed statue of this river beast. Of course, it's not accurate because it's based on eyewitness accounts. But you'll probably agree that it would be scary to see such a cute animal in the middle of the river while fishing. Almost all the stories are about a creature without hind limbs, but with front flippers, which swims like a dolphin, has a crocodile face, big eyes, and large, sharp teeth. It's gray or green with a whitish-yellow belly and a bony crest on its crown. And most interestingly, people have seen this creature in different sizes. Of course, when you see an unknown dinosaur-like thing, you can exaggerate its size or estimate it incorrectly, which explains the difference in statements. But there's also a probability that Georgia is home to a big family of Altamaha. One of the first people to see this creature and report it to a local newspaper was Captain Delano. On his schooner Eagle, he was sailing near St. Simon's Island, below the mouth of the Altamaha River, when he saw a creature about 70 feet long, which is almost twice the size of a school bus. Its body was like a barrel, and its head was like that of an alligator. It's possible that the captain greatly exaggerated the size of the monster because of the excitement, but several other people who were with him in the boat confirmed his words. From that moment on, reports of the river monster began to appear more often. Someone saw it flashing along the river. Others saw how it behaved defensively towards people. And some people reported that Altamaha was just basking in the sun. Just imagine its displeasure. Not only fishers met Altamaha. In the 20s of the last century, lumberjacks were crossing the river and saw a huge snake-like monster. In 1935, a group of hunters saw a creature they called a giant snake. In the 1940s, Boy Scouts encountered a similar creature. And in the 1950s, two employees from Reedsville State Prison saw it. For so many years, people have been meeting it, and no one has ever managed to catch the monster. Perhaps it's smarter than it looks and always very careful. Maybe people are afraid to touch it. Perhaps they consider it a national treasure and protect it. But one day, there was a case when Altamaha almost fell into a trap. In the summer of 1980, two men saw a monster wallowing on a muddy shore. It seemed like it was stuck and trying to get out. The witnesses said that the rough, dark-skinned creature had finally left the shore, dived into the water, and disappeared. Later that year, another man said he had seen something similar. A snake-like large creature with two brown humps protruding from the water. It dived into the water and churned the surface, like a boat while moving. Other witnesses catching crabs described Altamahaha as the largest eel in the world. Okay, stop! Many saw it in the last century, but what about more recent news? Is the monster still alive? Oh yeah. In 2002, a man was pulling a boat upriver near the town of Brunswick when he noticed something large, 20 feet long and about 6.5 feet wide, breaking out of the water. In 2010, a photographer caught something strange on camera floating along a canal in the city of Darien. And these cases are just the ones we know about. Surely, many people have seen this thing but haven't talked about it in newspapers or on the internet. If you don't believe these stories, you can go to Darien, get on a boat, and ride along the river to see this monster with your own eyes. Yes, according to reports, this creature always tries to avoid people. It's very cautious, but all the same, you should not get too close to this water lizard twice the size of a school bus. Go to the Museum of Darien to take a photo of the Altamahaha statue. There are also souvenirs with the image of this monster. But let's assume that you or someone else managed not only to take a clear photo of the Altamahaha, but also catch it. What is the next course of action? What are you going to tell the world, and how will the world react to it? What will happen to the poor animal, surrounded by millions of flashes from reporters' cameras? Will people make a show out of it or send it to a lab? Fortunately, in 2001, scientists already developed an action plan. This plan was drawn up by Scotland's nature agency, NatureScot, since they had concerns about the Loch Ness Monster. At some point, it became too popular and too many people tried to catch it, so the agency became concerned about saving the life of the famous creature. They showed the Nessie contingency plan that can also be used for any unknown animal that lives in water or on land. According to the plan, if the ancient lizard is captured, scientists should take its DNA sample and just release it back into the wild. Fair enough. The animal will receive the same legal protection as other local wildlife in Scotland. All attempts to catch it will be prohibited. But let's imagine that this is exactly what happens. Scientists receive a DNA sample of the Altamahaha, the Loch Ness Monster, or other similar creatures. What could those be? Some ancient descendants of dinosaurs? For example, the plesiosaur looks like a distant relative of these monsters. It's huge and has a long neck and a toothy mouth. What if it managed to survive and reach the Altamaha River? Or it may be a completely new, unknown species that lives in deep freshwater. Some people who saw Altamahaha said that it had produced a hissing sound. What if it's some kind of ancient python or anaconda that moved from land to water and grew fins? In any case, it should not be ruled out that it may be some kind of eel or sturgeon. One day, someone saw it, was impressed, and told other people about it with great exaggeration. Everyone believed it and started spreading the story. What do you think?
So, a few years ago, in 2019, folks in Australia said they liked an old idea with a new twist, using extra floodwater from the north to help dry areas in the west and south. This plan got the name of the New Brainfield Scheme. It was based on an old idea from the 1930s. The idea was to catch floodwater from the north and move it to the south and west. But the original plan never actually happened. Over the years, lots of experts said it wouldn't work. They thought it was too expensive and too tricky to build, even though it could potentially help fix drought problems in dry parts of Queensland. The original idea appeared a long time ago, when an engineer named John Branfield got a big idea. He wanted to take floodwater from rivers in northern Queensland and send it inland to Lake Erie, one of the driest spots in Australia. He planned to use dams, pumps, really big pipes, and even tunnels to transport all that water over the Great Dividing Range, a big mountain range in Australia. The biggest dam would have been called Hell's Gate, and Branfield wanted it twice as tall as what it was originally planned. This way, pumps and gravity could help move the water over the Great Dividing Range. The water would then flow south and help irrigate farmland near places like Hugenden. It would change the weather, make it rain more, and turn the dry land into green farms. Eventually, it would reach Lake Erie, turning the desert into a green growing area. That way, Australia could grow more food, sell it to other countries, and make more jobs. He hoped that the area could turn into a food bowl for the country. For some time, people talked about the plan a lot. They loved the idea. They thought it could change how farming worked. And some even believed that nature had already planned for the land to be filled with water. Dry rivers and lake beds were just waiting to be used. They even said that rains fell on the wrong side of the mountains, and Brandfield's plan could fix that. But when the authorities looked into this idea, they found big problems. And the main one was that the plan would cost too much. Plus, there weren't enough scientists or engineers to do a full investigation. The land was too dry and harsh. No one was sure it would even work, like how much water would really get there. Plus, some of Brandfield's measurements were wrong, especially the dam heights. So, in 1947, they officially shut the project down, claiming that even if they built the project, it wouldn't be worth it. After all, even places next to oceans, like parts of Chile, still stay bone dry, so a big lake might not result in more rain. And still, in 2019, one political party brought the idea back with an updated version called the new Brandfield scheme. They wanted to try it again, but with some changes to make it work better. Their plan included the following steps. Take water from the South Johnstone, Tully, Herbert, and Burdekin rivers. Store that water using a big dam called Hell's Gate Dam, but this time they wanted to make the dam twice as tall as in the original plan. Let the water flow through tunnels using gravity instead of using lots of pumps. Move the water under the mountains and into the Warrego River in southern Queensland. Use the water to grow crops in dry places south and west of Hugheden, a huge area even bigger than Tasmania, eventually turning it into a food bowl. At the same time, they didn't say how much the whole project would cost, but they promised to spend $20 million to let Australia's National Science Agency check if the plan could work. Those innovative ideas sounded good, but for over 80 years, loads of experts kept saying, "Nope, it won't work." Why? Brandfield said his idea would cost £40 million back in 1941. That's about $3.2 billion today. But the new version of the plan might cost more than $15 billion and take over 10 years to build. Also, people who care about nature are worried. They explain that taking water away from where it usually goes could hurt animals and plants. It might let invasive plants and animals spread to new places. It might mess up rivers and oceans where fish and other animals live. It could even hurt towns and businesses near the coast that depend on those natural water flows. Still, some people really believed in the idea and thought it was worth doing, especially to help farmers and fix drought problems. However, in 2022, the government decided to stop trying to fix the drought in western Queensland with the Brandfield scheme. Experts looked closely at the plan and said it just wouldn't work. The problem? There's not enough water all the time to make it happen. Apparently, the new cost of the plan would have been over $30 billion. That's a huge amount of money. You could buy yourself a fleet of private jets and luxurious yachts, and more. So experts said you'd need lots and lots of water to spend that kind of money, but the water just isn't there. Now, instead of one huge project, they suggested doing smaller water projects closer to where the rain and waterfalls are. These smaller projects, called mini Brandfield grids, would be in 4 places along the Queensland coast. Those little grids could share water when some places had more or less rain. Other scientists looked at the plan too, and they agreed. Even if things went super well, the Brandfield scheme would still cause problems and cost way too much, while the mini water grids project looks more plausible. They think the dry parts west of the mountains will do better without the full-scale Brandfield scheme. There are easier and cheaper ways to help those places grow and get water. So the big plan was dropped, and now they're looking at smarter, smaller ideas to help with water and farming. And the matter is quite urgent. Australia is a super dry place, one of the driest places people actually live in. When there's a drought, there's not much water around. That means farms don't grow as much food, and that can cause a lot of problems. In the future, droughts are likely to happen more often and be worse. That's why it's necessary to start getting ready now. Experts are working on something called the Drought Resilience Mission, trying to figure out how to deal with droughts better in the future. One of them looked at how much droughts actually cost Australia. His research shows that droughts can hurt a lot of things – farms, jobs, towns, and even the whole country. When there's no rain for a really long time, some towns can actually run out of water. That's called day zero. It's when the taps in people's houses get turned off because there's just no water left. In 2020, a town in Queensland called Stanthorpe hit day zero. About 50 other towns were really close too. When such a situation happens, the only way to get water is by bringing it in with trucks, and that's super expensive. Stanthorpe had to get around 20 trucks of water every day for a year and a half. It cost them about $800,000 every month. In the end, they spent over $14 million just to have water. Luckily, it started raining again and filled the dams back up. But the authorities are working on ways to stop this kind of thing from happening again. They want to help towns be ready so they never run out of water like that. Because drought just doesn't mess with water, it can also mess with people's health. When everything dries up, plants vanish and the soil gets loose. Then the wind picks it up and makes huge dust storms. Those dust clouds can blow really far, even into such big cities as Sydney. That's what happened in 2018. The air got so bad that kids, older people, and anyone with breathing problems had to be extremely careful. The dust ruined some crops and made different foods, even fruit, unsafe to eat.
Hey, check this out. Does this pebble look like a face to you? Especially with that red dot in the middle. If yes, you might be staring at the world's first emoji. It was uncovered in Spain and it's 43,000 years old. And that red spot was made by a Neanderthal with a finger. That means this isn't just a dot. It's the oldest fingerprint ever found. But was this really a nose on a grumpy face? And why is that important? Because it hints at something big. A mind seeing shapes, then choosing to add meaning. The palm-sized rock was discovered in a Paleolithic rock shelter tucked away under some light-colored chalky cliffs. It was pretty much a natural overhang where Neanderthals used to hang out. They called it home tens of thousands of years ago. As for the pebble, to me, the dot seems like a random ketchup stain from ages ago. But real archaeologists know better. The neat placement instantly caught their attention. After running tests, they determined that the stain wasn't natural. It seems intentional, not random. Their guess? Someone thousands of years ago may have dipped a fingertip into a mix of ochre pigment and water, then pressed it onto the stone, leaving a tiny prehistoric stamp. To put that theory to the test, they called forensic experts from Spain's national police. At first, the specialists were pretty doubtful. After all, this was the ultimate definition of a cold case. But with multispectral imaging, which lets scientists study surfaces under different wavelengths of light, something amazing popped up: clear fingerprint ridges. The print's rounded form showed it came from the tip of a finger. Comparing it with fingerprint databases, the evidence pointed to one likely candidate: an adult male, not a woman or a child. Finding any fingerprint this old is insanely rare. Pigments usually fade, rocks erode, and time wipes away delicate details like ridges. When it comes to fingerprints, the unique patterns actually form before you're even born. During pregnancy, they never change. You might wonder, could a clever criminal damage their skin to erase their fingerprints and fool the cops? Turns out that's basically impossible. Fingerprints aren't just on the surface. They form deep in the skin, in a layer called the dermis. Even if you burn, cut, or scar the outer layer, the patterns underneath usually stay the same and even heal back. Scars might distort the print a little, but that won't help. Ironically, those scars often become a new kind of fingerprint, unique to the person. With today's forensic tools, even a partial print is enough, not to mention the DNA. Yes, fingerprints are just patterns, but they usually come with sweat, skin cells, or oils that may contain DNA. Here's another cool fact. Koalas also have unique fingerprints just like we do. Under a microscope, even experts sometimes struggle to tell them apart from human prints. Scientists think these ridges help koalas grip branches and pick leaves with precision. The bottom line, fingerprints are basically nature's unhackable signature. It's something humans, Neanderthals, and apparently even koalas have been leaving behind for tens of thousands of years. If it's been a while since your biology classes, here are some clarifications. Neanderthals weren't our direct ancestors, they're more like our long-lost cousins. Colloquially, we call them humans too. But for scientists, Neanderthals and modern humans were different species within the same genus. Kind of like how lions and tigers are both big cats, but they're not the same species. Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis split from a common ancestor hundreds of thousands of years ago. Neanderthals dominated Ice Age Europe. When Homo sapiens arrived around 45,000 years ago, the two met, mixed, and today, most people outside Africa carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Eventually, the balance shifted. Within just a few thousand years, Neanderthals disappeared, while modern humans kept spreading. Scientists think it was a mix of different factors. Shifting climates made food scarce, new neighbors brought competition, and their small, scattered populations just made survival even tougher. Now, here's why this little fingerprint is such a big deal. For decades, scientists thought Neanderthals were just built for survival. Strong, but simple. Homo sapiens were supposed to be the creative ones. For a long time, scientists thought they were special because they could think in symbols. Tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors carved patterns into stones, painted animals on cave walls, and wore beads and pigments as decoration. The earliest proof of symbolic art comes from Blombos Cave in South Africa, where humans etched deliberate designs on pieces of red ochre over 70,000 years ago. Those symbols had no survival purpose. Researchers believe they were expressions of ideas, identity, and meaning. That ability to imagine and represent things we couldn't see was thought to be uniquely human. But this one tiny red dot on a stone challenges that idea. See, the stone already looked like a face, and someone all the way back deliberately pressed a red nose right where it should be. That's symbolic thinking. That could mean that Neanderthals weren't just making tools and hunting mammoths. Perhaps they were able to imagine things. And this isn't just the only clue. This fingerprint is part of a growing pattern that shows Neanderthals were way more like us than we ever believed. For example, in Cova Negra, Spain, archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a Neanderthal child who had a serious ear condition that made life incredibly hard. However, the little one lived to be around 6 years old. Now, remember, this was the Ice Age. Just managing on your own was challenging. Survival was tough. Food was scarce and danger was everywhere. Yet, someone made sure that the child was looked after, fed, and kept safe. Scientists believe that this shows a trait of compassion, something we once believed only our species was capable of. In Iraq, scientists found a Neanderthal skeleton sprinkled with flower pollen. Sounds random. Maybe not. Some believe it was part of a funeral ritual, like the world's first floral tribute. If that's true, Neanderthals weren't just surviving, they were remembering and honoring life. Neanderthals were apparently quite resourceful. Around 176,000 years ago, they were stacking stalagmites into neat circles in Bruniquel Cave in France. Was this some kind of ritual or just curiosity? Maybe this means that they had the idea of planning and changing their surroundings. Then, around 130,000 years ago, They took eagle talons and turned them into jewelry in Croatia. Yep, early bling. This suggests they were into looking good and possibly showing off a bit socially. There were no sewing machines back then, but Neanderthals had stone scrapers and even bone needles. With those, they crafted animal skin outfits that were perfect for the freezing Ice Age climate. When you step back and consider all of these, that tiny red fingerprint isn't just a mark on stone. If it was meant to represent a nose, it's part of a much bigger story. Neanderthals cared for one another, crafted tools and clothing, created jewelry, painted on cave walls, and built mysterious structures deep in caves. Basically, they were thinking a lot more like us than we used to imagine. And here's the fun part. What if that little red dot wasn't meant to be a nose at all? Maybe it was a joke, a charm, or just a doodle. Heck, it could have been the first face meme scratched onto rock. Whatever it was, unless it really was an accident, it shows imagination. So the next time you send an emoji, remember that Neanderthals had the same idea. Personally, I like that it's a grumpy one, but at the very least, we now have the oldest fingerprint ever discovered. That alone is extraordinary. But add the fact that the print was placed right on a stone that already resembled a face, and suddenly, the questions multiply. Let's hope the researchers discover more about it so we can know for sure. What we do know is that 43,000 years ago, a Neanderthal pressed a finger onto stone and left us with one of the most personal signatures in prehistory.
This is Australia. And here, a little to the south, is its island part called Tasmania. It's a giant island with beautiful and rich nature, great weather, and delicious food. But for some reason, very few people live here. Something makes people leave this place. Something prevents people from moving here. And this something is… let's find out. So, the population of Tasmania is over 500,000 people. That's not a lot. In fact, Tasmania is Australia's smallest state by population, but it's the 26th largest island in the world. Its area is about the size of Ireland or Switzerland. In other states, the area is much smaller, and there are quite a lot of people. For example, over 8 million residents live in New South Wales, more than 7 million in Victoria, and over 5 million in Queensland. Also, mainland Australia is much more likely to endure fires and scorching sun. Tasmania has a fairly cool climate and amazing nature. So, what's the reason? Why do so few people live here? Let's visit the southeastern part of Tasmania, where the Tasman Peninsula is located. If you look at the map, you'll see that there's the Tasman Sea connected to the boundless Pacific Ocean. So it looks like the Port Arthur we're going to visit is on the edge of the world. In the past, there was Tasmania's official prison here that opened in 1830. Prisoners served their sentences and worked at a logging station. It was hard work, and many could not survive it. It's scary to imagine what happened inside the walls of this prison and how many people stayed there forever. But think for yourself. The Tasman Peninsula is on the edge of the world. There's almost nothing here except wild nature. Prisoners arrived there on ships and spent long hours doing hard work. There was no air conditioning or a soft bed. There was no hope of getting out of there. Some guards treated them cruelly. They were starving. Some got bitten by venomous snakes. There was nowhere to escape. The prison closed in 1877, but even today, it still inspires horror among tourists. Not only because of its appearance and history, but also because of the strange phenomena that occur there. According to rumors and legends, the spirits of prisoners roam the territory of Port Arthur. And on Monday morning, you can hear bells ring in an old ruined church building. But the thing is, the bells haven't been there for a long time. Of course, those are all rumors, and there are no confirmed facts. But you might feel uncomfortable in this place because of its sinister past and creepy atmosphere. Port Arthur is one of the most mysterious places in Tasmania, but there's something worse. Welcome to Franklin House. It's a large estate with gardens and a huge building. There's a chance that as soon as you cross the threshold of this house, you will want to leave immediately. There are a lot of antiques here, but there's also something elusive and sinister in the air. This house was built by a former convict. 4 years after the construction, he leased the mansion to a schoolteacher who turned it into an academy for boys. It's not known what happened in the walls of this building in the past, but today, according to rumors, mysterious phenomena take place here. Objects move by themselves. Eerie noises come from empty rooms, and shadows of human figures are spotted in halls. Plus, according to a non-profit company that researches mysterious phenomena, there's an increased level of electromagnetic activity in this house. What does it mean? Nature? Weather? Or phantoms? Choose for yourself what to believe in. Okay, there are 2 creepy places in Tasmania, but the reason why people leave this place is different. We're getting closer and closer to it. Hobart is the capital of Tasmania, and there's an old prison here, where people still run tours. Tourists come here to tickle their nerves, because the most terrible sentences were carried out here. There are rumors about strange smells, flickering shadows, and a creepy atmosphere that make this place scary. Yes, if you're a tourist and come here for fun, you will get an interesting experience. But if you're a local and live nearby, then maybe it might bother you. But of course, an abandoned old prison wouldn't discourage people from living on a giant, picturesque island. There's a bigger reason. There's a city in Tasmania called Richmond. According to local legends, once upon a time, George Grover lived here. He was a security guard who kept order during the construction of the Richmond Bridge, which was built by convicts. George Grover was an evil man who treated prisoners cruelly. One day, the prisoners decided to take revenge on him and pushed him off the bridge. Since then, rumors have been circulating that the spirit of George Grover is walking under the bridge with his big black and white dog, which is called Grover's dog. Tourists and locals reported they had seen this evil security guard at night. He didn't harm them, but gave a severe fright. Many terrible events related to escaped prisoners also took place on the island, so judging by the history of Tasmania, there's been a lot of pain and misery here. Perhaps this affects the overall energy of the island. But is this the reason why so few people come to live here? Now we'll finally learn the most terrifying explanation. Are you ready? Please get away from the screens if you're faint of heart. There's almost no internet connection in some parts of the island. Boo! The signal is very weak and unreliable, which makes it impossible for people to work remotely and watch our videos. Besides, Tasmania is separated from Australia by the Bass Strait, which creates logistical difficulties for trade and traveling. Today in 2025, would you agree to live on a huge island with bad internet? You will also have to pay more and wait longer for the delivery of any goods. One of the main sources of income is tourism. In addition, rental prices are rising here, especially in central cities. Because of logistical difficulties, prices for food and necessities are rising here. One of the biggest problems is waiting lists in public hospitals in Tasmania. People who need modern medical care have to wait a long time for their turn, or they gotta spend tons of money to get to the mainland. Tasmania is getting old. More and more young people are leaving this place. There are no major corporate headquarters on the island. There are no large enterprises here like in Sydney and Melbourne, which means there are few career opportunities. Low salaries and unemployment are forcing young people to move to the mainland. The falling standard of living creates serious demographic problems. On the one hand, this is bad. The fewer people there are, the more difficult it is to raise the economy, to run agriculture, and somehow improve this region. But on the other hand, it's good for nature. About 24% of Tasmania's land area is a World Heritage Site. This territory is one of the last in the world to have cool rainforests. It's also home to one of the richest archaeological sites in Australia. Scientists found evidence that people lived here at least 20,000 years ago. Of course, these factors are not as creepy as the stories about haunted houses, but they can scare you away from moving to Tasmania. The idea that you live almost on the edge of the world, surrounded by the endless waters of the ocean, can be scary. you can meet unique animals that don't live anywhere else in the world and see incredible trees. For example, the Centurion tree, which is eucalyptus, is one of the tallest and oldest trees in the world. Its height is about 330 feet, and its age is about 400 years. The nature of Tasmania is incredibly beautiful. There's so much peace and calm here. In a sense, it's a paradise. But let's be honest, would you agree to live here considering all the nuances? Let's hope that people will find ways to improve the economy and raise the standard of living so young people won't leave this region. In Colombia, people saw a small round object floating in the sky which then fell to the ground. They recorded it on video and picked it up. It turned out to be a strange round metal sphere. There were no turbines or propellers on it, which are common for drones. Plus, according to eyewitnesses, the sphere was cold after it fell to the ground. It weighs only 4.5 pounds, which is twice as light as a bowling ball. But the most interesting thing is what was written on it. Unknown symbols resembling the runes and writings of ancient civilizations, like those from Mesopotamia. With the help of AI, a researcher managed to decipher the mysterious inscription, and this is what it read: "The origin of birth through union and energy in the cycle of transformation, meeting point of unity, expansion, and consciousness, individual consciousness." What? It sounds too philosophical and fanatical, but what do you think? Okay, the inscription is more or less clear, but what about the composition of the sphere? What is its origin? Its design differs from standard production methods since it has no welding seams and joints. Using X-rays, scientists saw the interior of the sphere. It turned out that the sphere consisted of 3 layers and had 9 to 18 microspheres inside, depending on different sources. All of them were located around the core. Obviously, many people started to claim that this was some kind of unknown technology from another planet. How it floated and why it turned out to be cold is unknown, but let's be honest. If it was really some unknown mysterious object from space, then the whole world would already be talking about it. The sphere looks like an art object or something like that. And all these tricks with hovering as well as the encrypted message seem to be part of some kind of performance. Most internet users have the same opinion, by the way. What do you think is the point of this project? Perhaps the artist wanted to show how easy it was to make people believe in extraordinary things. Or if you read the deciphered words attentively, it looks like a philosophical message encouraging us to stop ruining the planet and claiming that progress and nature must unite. But how did it fly? Perhaps the artist or someone else drew a flying sphere on a computer and added it to the recorded video and then threw it on the ground. To be honest, the sphere from Colombia is not very surprising, unlike these small spheres that were found in a 3-billion-year-old rock. It happened in South Africa in the 80s. Mysterious spheres similar to tiny cricket balls are called Klerksdorp spheres. They have a smooth surface and tiny lines running through the center. They look like they were created by some ancient cave human, but the only catch is that 3 billion years ago, there were no humans. There weren't even any dinosaurs. So who or what created these things? Many pseudoscientists say that the spheres were created by extraterrestrial civilizations. An employee of the museum where they were kept even said the spheres spun on their own. How was it possible? A thorough analysis revealed the truth. The answer was simple. The creator of the spheres is nature. These things are called concretions and are found in various places around the world. The small balls are made up of various minerals and rocks. But how does nature create them? There's a small grain of sand inside the stone. For millions and billions of years, water with minerals envelops this grain in layers, and thus, a small ball is formed. And these lines on the sphere are the traces of the stone inside which this sphere grew. But how did they roll in the museum? Very simple. round objects can roll with the slightest push. Not far from the place where the museum is located, people mined gold. It probably caused small earthquakes, and the shaking of the ground made the spheres move. So, nothing strange here. But if these little spheres were moving and making weird loud noises, it would be pretty creepy. Fortunately, there was no such thing in the museum. But something similar happened in Jacksonville. A large metal sphere the size of a bowling ball became perhaps the most famous sphere in the world after the Betts family found it at the Fort George Island Forest in 1974. Jerry, Antoine, and their 21-year-old son Terry were walking in the woods around their private property when Terry found a mysterious metal ball. He thought it was a beautiful souvenir, so he took it with him. The strange artifact stayed in the house like a trinket. No one paid any attention to it until Terry started playing guitar. At that moment, the sphere rolled on its own. Or not. You'll find out later. It changed direction and stopped, then vibrated and made a high-pitched sound that made dogs whine and cover their ears. All the family members immediately realized that this was something bizarre. One of the first people the Betts family told about the sphere was a radio host who loved mysterious stories. It's worth noting that in the 70s, the topic of extraterrestrial civilizations was very popular. Therefore, Betts' sphere became a superstar very quickly. The radio host confirmed that the sphere was behaving quite strangely. Then, another person did it. After that, the family started inviting journalists to the house. Stories about the Betts sphere spread throughout Jacksonville, and very soon across the country. Newspapers wrote about the extraterrestrial origin of the sphere. Journalists interviewed the members of the Betts family. People seemed to be going crazy because of this story. Of course, the news about the mysterious artifact reached the country's authorities. The US Navy decided to take a look at the Betts sphere to make sure it wasn't their technology. But what if it was some kind of secret development that fell out of a plane and ended up in the hands of civilians? Fortunately for the Navy, this theory turned out to be false. They analyzed the sphere and found out that it was made of stainless steel, but they couldn't figure out who its creator was. But they knew for sure that the sphere had been made on Earth. A tiny triangular chip on the surface caused the ball to roll on the floor in different directions. In such a perfectly balanced object, even a tiny flaw could make the ball move in a strange way. Also, the construction of the house was uneven. Any light touch caused the sphere to move and change direction. The US Navy soon revealed the origin of this mysterious object. It was a large ball bearing that was used as a ball check valve in the pipeline system of a chemical plant. Sometime later, news broke that another similar sphere had been found. It turned out to be part of a valve used in a paper mill. Over time, other details turned up. An artist from New Mexico collected various kinds of scrap metal to use in creating sculptures. He told reporters that he had once loaded a ball check valve onto the roof of his bus and drove through the Jacksonville area in 1971. A few balls fell out. Perhaps one of them rolled off into the woods where the Betts family found it. That's the whole story. No magic or extraterrestrial technology. But despite all these investigations, the Betts sphere still remained famous. People called the family 24 hours a day. Journalists came to their private property to see the sphere. Of course, the family was tired of such popularity. Telling reporters the same things about this sphere over and over again was not the most fun activity. At some point, the members of the family stopped discussing it. In an interview, Jerry Betts said that all this popularity had suppressed the family. They were no longer engaged in investigations related to the spheres, so the exact origin of this thing was not proven. But as you've already heard, the theories seem to be quite true. Dinosaurs, big ancient bugs, creepy spiders, and scary insects are all cute animals compared to the monsters that lived on Earth about 500 million years ago. For example, here's a creature that swam in the water like a stingray and had 3 eyes. Its mouth was like a pencil sharpener. 2 long claws with forked tips like pincers protruded from its head,
and its gills were somewhere in the back. This is not a thing from a sci-fi movie. This is Mosaura. Its remains are preserved in excellent condition. Let's look at it more closely and study other similar monsters. The Cambrian Explosion. Remember this name. This period is also called the Biological Big Bang, the time when a huge number of different living creatures began to appear in the ocean, large, small, and tiny. The ancestors of almost all modern animal groups were most likely born during the Cambrian Explosion, which lasted from 541 to 485 million years ago. It was a time when the first truly effective and terrifying predators appeared on Earth. One of them was Mosaura. It's only the size of an index finger, but you would never want to meet such a creature while swimming in the sea. It's scary to imagine what it could do with its pencil sharpener-shaped mouth. And you probably wouldn't be able to hide from it because, come on, it had 2 eyes on the sides and 1 big eye on its forehead. Mosaura belonged to a group of arthropods. Scientists called it a sea moth since it reminded them of a moth. This thing used a flap-like apparatus similar to wings to float in the water like a stingray. This monster was quite creepy, but its appearance may seem familiar because it's a distant relative of modern spiders, crabs, centipedes, and moths. Scientists found several 506 million-year-old Mosaura fossils, but unlike many other similar finds, these ones have been preserved in excellent condition. The found fossils showed sharp claws, a toothy jaw, and large gills in the tail section. Some parts of the fossil were so clear that they revealed the details of the creature's internal anatomy, including parts of its nervous and circulatory systems and digestive tract. It had jointed limbs like those of modern insects and crustaceans. When this monster swam in the sea, it probably grabbed its prey with long spiked claws sticking out of its head. Many Mosaura relatives have claws covered with multiple spikes, which help them grab food. But that ancient creature had smooth claws forked at the tips. That is, it grabbed the prey with those tongs, using them like chopsticks, and then brought it to its mouth. Of course, this is an assumption, and nobody saw how this creature actually did it. Unlike many other similar animals, Mosaura's posterior segmented body was studded with gills. Scientists don't know why this was necessary, but they assume that such an unusual breathing system helped to adapt to an environment with low oxygen content. Perhaps Mosaura led a very active reproductive lifestyle that required high oxygen consumption. Creepy, dangerous, and reproducing fast. An excellent set of qualities for one of the most dangerous predators of antiquity. But what did Mosaura eat? It probably caught different types of worms and small arthropods. It's nice to think that this monster lived so long ago and was so small. But what if this creature was the size of a shark and was swimming in the ocean these days? Perhaps it would become a dominant dweller and people would swim much less along the coast. Mosaura lived in the water but was discovered in the Burgess Shale rock formation in the Canadian Rockies. Many mountains on Earth were once the seabed inhabited by strange creatures. One of them was Opabinia. It had 5 eyes, a mouth facing backward, a long trunk and claws instead of a nose. Wait, what? It's too strange even for science fiction, even for outer space. In its eccentricity, Opabinia was perhaps the loneliest creature on Earth. Scientists couldn't find another species that would be similar to this individual until recently. Meet Utaurora. It seems to belong to the same species as Opabinia. Its inch-long body was divided into 14 to 15 furrows. Each of them ended in a pointed flap. Opabinia had the same body, but it's unlikely that both monsters were friends. The difference between their timelines was several million years. It's hard to imagine why these monsters needed such strange body structures. Why haven't modern filmmakers used the design of those animals to create cool space monsters yet? Okay, they were creepy creatures, but what about weird and kinda useless ones? Scientists have discovered Sue, a legless creature with no head turned inside out. Huh? This 444 million-year-old creature was found in South Africa, north of Cape Town. They called it Sue after the discoverer's mother. In fact, it's some kind of new arthropod species that may have lived in low-oxygen waters. This creature was turned inside out, and the outer shell with the legs and head was lost. Thanks to mineralization, muscles, tendons, and even Sue's intestines were preserved on the fossil. It's a great success to find such detailed remains of an ancient creature. However, scientists still can't determine the evolutionary history of this species. They're sure that it was a primitive marine arthropod. Okay, we can see that 500 million years ago, Earth was filled with creepy monsters, which fortunately are now extinct. But what about trees? Were they the same as we see now? Or was there something else? Something creepy? Oh yeah. Scientists have discovered a new kind of living organism similar to a tree or a mushroom. It was gigantic and had a very minimalistic design. Meet the Prototaxites. It's basically just a big stick with a round end poking out of the ground. It was smooth, didn't have the usual tree bark, and looked more like a mushroom without a cap. But scientists have recently found out that it wasn't a mushroom at all. Prototaxites probably belonged to a previously unknown branch of life. Prototaxites is considered to be the first giant organism in the history of the planet that lived on land. It existed about 420 to 375 million years ago during the Devonian period. It was the time when plants began to spread across dry land, forming large forests. Over time, they began to grow leaves and form roots in the ground. Then, the first seed plants appeared. The real colonization of land began. The first arthropods, such as centipedes, arachnids, and other unpleasant creatures, began to walk among those forests. Meanwhile, the water was filled with a huge biodiversity. There was a giant supercontinent on the planet, and smaller parts began to break off it. During this period, Prototaxites towered over the land. Some of these things reached 26 feet high and 3 feet wide. It's like a 3-story house and as thick as a palm tree. But what was it? A plant? A mushroom? Algae, perhaps? Scientists discovered them in the middle of the 19th century, but only in 2007 did they conduct chemical analysis. Research showed that it was most likely a giant mushroom, but in 2025, scientists refuted this conclusion. It turns out this may have been an unknown life form that existed separately from the kingdom of fungi, animals, plants, and protists. Scientists noticed that the inner part of Prototaxites consisted of a number of tubes. There are similar tubes inside mushrooms, but the tubes of that ancient living thing branched and joined differently. They even had a different chemical composition. The main building block of mushrooms is chitin, but the Prototaxites contained chemicals similar to lignin, a substance found in the bark of trees and other plants, and its anatomy differs from the structure of any other organism known to us. What were they doing on Earth? Just chilled and enjoyed the bloom of life? Did they produce some kind of fruit, like a banana with eyes and claws? Scientists don't know. What if it was something that was brought to Earth from outer space? What if they were flowers planted by another civilization? What do you think? You're probably familiar with the saying, X marks the spot. It comes from pirate lore and adventure stories often linked with treasure maps. They may be out of fashion these days, but that doesn't stop countless antiquity hunters from searching through hills and fields daily. One such enthusiast didn't have a map with a giant X on it, but when his metal detector beeped on a sunny day in April 2025, he uncovered one of the largest buried coin hoards ever recorded. So, what kind of treasure are we talking about here, and what makes it so unique? The discovery was made by Romanian hobbyist Marius Manghia, who says he just wanted an excuse to get some exercise and fresh air. During one of those walks with his metal detector in a location 30 miles southwest of Bucharest, the device picked up a signal. As he began to dig, he found a handful of silver coins just beneath the surface. Though oxidized, they seemed remarkably well preserved. Oxidation happens when metal reacts with air or moisture over time, causing it to change color, darken, or develop a crusty surface. Just like a sliced apple darkens when exposed to air if left out too long.
The pile of coins grew quickly. Soon, it was obvious they were all packed into a ceramic jar. The final count was nearly 1,500 silver denarii, Roman coins likely buried around 1,700 years ago. However, these denarii date from the reigns of emperors Nero to Marcus Aurelius, covering over a century during the Roman imperial period, which means they're almost 2,000 years old. The presence of coins from multiple emperors suggests that the wealth was accumulated over many years. The Roman money system had a bunch of different coin types, so finding only silver denarii in the stash is a bit odd. It would be like burying $15,000 in cash, but all of it $10 bills. It could mean that the original owner was a trader. Maybe he was hiding his profits during dangerous times. Perhaps it was simply someone's life savings. Depending on the emperor and the period, the value of denarius fluctuated quite a bit, so 1,500 denarii could have been either a comfortable retirement fund or not nearly enough. In the 1st century, 1 silver denarius could get you 12 loaves of bread, and if you have 5 of them, you could buy an amphora full of wine. An amphora was a large 2-handled ceramic jar used to store and transport wine, oil, or grain, and it seems to be the type of vessel in which this treasure was buried. Though amphorae were made in many different shapes and sizes, the Romans eventually standardized them as a unit of measurement, with 1 amphora being roughly equal to 7 gallons of liquid. The spot where the jar was buried wasn't tampered with. This might indicate that the hoard remained undetected all this time, but the amphora had already been broken when it was found. But why would it be broken, and what could that mean? While the exact cause of the breakage has not been explained yet, archaeologists say it may have been broken on purpose as part of a protective ritual before burial. In some ancient cultures, ritual vessels were deliberately damaged as a symbolic act. Maybe it means the jar had done its job, either as an offering to the gods or to keep someone from stealing it. You can have my silver, but I'm not giving you my precious jar. However, such rituals were not common in Roman culture, so it's a mystery for now. Perhaps it broke because the jar contained silver while being exposed to 2 millennia of soil pressure, freeze-thaw cycles, root growth, or a blind mole rat trying to find its way around. Although the amphora and its silver are now being preserved and examined by experts, their discoverer almost ended up unrewarded. After finding the hoard, he had to notify the police so they could secure the site. However, he was under pressure because in Romania, you have 72 hours to report any significant historical find. Unfortunately for Mr. Mangiac, he ran into a problem since it was a holiday and the offices he needed to contact were closed. He spent the following 2 days meticulously photographing every single coin before finally being able to present his findings to the authorities. While the exact amount of prize Mr. Mangiac might receive isn't publicly known, Romanian law typically awards 45% of a discovery's appraised value to the finder. Not a bad outcome for what started as a casual walk with a metal detector. Meanwhile, the site itself had been declared an archaeological zone, and any future digging will be done under expert supervision, which means that this story might have a follow-up one day. But for now, let's focus on what makes metal detectors beep and see if there are more hidden troves to be found around the world. Today, most hobby-grade detectors rely on something called VLF technology, where VLF stands for very low frequency. When you sweep the detector over the ground, its coil sends out an invisible magnetic field. If something metallic is within that field, for example a nail, a discarded wedding ring, or ancient Roman silver, it bounces back a signal. The device picks that up and beeps to let you know something's there. The stronger the signal, the closer or bigger the object probably is. Basically, it's using electromagnetic induction to make buried metal respond, like calling into a cave and listening for the echo coming back at you. Fun fact, bats use a similar principle to detect what's in their environment, but with sound. It's called echolocation. If you yell in a cave and disturb a bat, it might send out high-pitched clicks that bounce off objects and return as echoes, helping them pinpoint everything around them. Doesn't matter if it's a tiny insect or a pesky human in complete darkness. Metal detectors use magnetic waves, bats use squeaks and echoes. Now, if all this got you curious about grabbing a detector yourself, what are some major locations to consider? Mr. Mangiak simply went for a walk, but for many, it's a rewarding hobby that helps history and also pays off well. And not just in Romania, but all over the world. In the UK, regions like Norfolk, Suffolk, and Lincolnshire have become hotspots where enthusiasts regularly uncover Roman coins, Viking relics, and medieval artifacts. During the Iron Age, burying valuables was a common practice. Some researchers think it was done as a way of storing valuables. Others think it was part of a ritual. But either way, many of those hoards could still be there. France also has plenty of stuff hidden beneath the ground, including ancient Roman and Gallic treasures. In the Netherlands, someone recently uncovered a fragment of an extremely rare Viking sword. Scotland is no exception either, and findings like Peebles' hoard give additional insights into the Bronze Age. If you don't feel like venturing alone, there are organized metal detecting tours available in various countries, offering guided access to historically rich sites. That's if you're planning to search for lost relics. But what if you want to bury your own treasure chest and hide it from a metal detector? How far do you need to dig? Most hobby-grade detectors can spot a large object close to 3 feet deep. Smaller stuff like coins, just 6 to 8 inches. We also have to take into consideration that wet ground can actually boost detection. It helps signals travel better and makes buried metal easier to spot. On the other hand, professional, expensive detectors that use advanced technology can detect large metallic targets at depths of almost 100 feet, especially on a rainy day. But unless you bury your chest in a strategically important place, odds are it'll stay uncovered. Just don't forget to mark the spot on your map with an X. It's June of 1857. A fierce storm slams into Gechen Bay, Australia, and rips apart a Dutch ship weighing 800 tons. Part of the crew tries to escape in a small boat, but only 9 of the 25 men on board survive. Now, many years later, researchers believe they've found this long-lost gold rush shipwreck. Yep, this ship is tied to one of the most dramatic high-stakes chapters in Australia's history. We're talking about the shipwreck of Koning Willem de Tweede, a vessel built back in 1840. This historic ship discovery is a big deal since it's now considered a real treasure in the world of underwater archaeology in Australia. Let me tell you why. By the middle of the 19th century, Dutch ships were carrying not just goods, but also people from Asia who were hoping to start a new life in Australia. And they were all chasing one thing: gold. Yep, the precious metal was discovered in Australia in 1851. Well, officially at least. It was actually found a few years earlier, but let's just say the authorities decided to keep that little detail away from the newspapers. Anyway, the big public discovery happened in 1851 when an Australian gold prospector named Edward Hammond Hargraves led an expedition in the New South Wales region, and he chose to tell everyone about his find. And just like that, the gold rush began. News spreads fast, so people start arriving from everywhere: Britain, Ireland, Germany, the Netherlands, and also from China. It's estimated by that time around 20,000 Chinese had made their way to the goldfields in Victoria. By 1861, about 3% of the Australian population had been born in the Asian country. Most of them came from the southern region of Guangdong, which was going through a really tough time back then. They'd been through it all: foreign invasions, massive floods, serious food shortages, you name it. Many people had lost everything. Their money was gone, their homes destroyed. They couldn't even afford a bite to eat. There was no clear way out of the poverty they were stuck in. But then, word started to spread. There was a goldfield somewhere in a distant British territory. They heard stories from people all over the world going there, that it was peaceful, full of opportunity, and that the land itself had everything you could need. It sounded like a dream. Before long, they began calling it Xinjinshan, or New Gold Mountain. So, many scraped together what little they had left to reach Australia and start over. It was a shot at a better life, a chance to lift entire families out of poverty. But getting there wasn't cheap or easy. They had to travel in huge ships, and the average trip from Guangdong province took about 3 months to reach Sydney or Melbourne. At some point, Australian authorities decided to impose a tax on Chinese arrivals. Every passenger who disembarked at Victorian ports had to pay a £10 poll tax. So what do you think happened? The routes changed, of course. Instead of docking directly in Victoria, ships began stopping in Robe, a town in the southeastern part of South Australia. From there, people would walk about 250 miles all the way to the goldfields just to avoid paying the tax. And this area is exactly where the Koning Willem de Tweede was discovered. Yep, our Dutch ship was found off the Robe coast, and it was one of many vessels that carried Chinese passengers to Australia. Now you can see why it's historically important, right? On the 16th of June, 1857, it brought around 400 people safely to shore so they could start their lives over. The ship itself didn't get a happy ending though. After dropping them off, it was supposed to continue its journey, but then a storm rolled in. So, the ship had to drop anchor and wait it out in Geechin Bay. The weather kept getting worse. The anchor began to drag, and by the 13th of June, it was completely lost. The captain, called Hendrik Geisen, had to act fast. He made the call to beach the ship in hopes of saving both the vessel and his crew. But there was a problem. The ship ran aground on Long Beach, about 3 miles east of Robe, and it started breaking apart quickly in the rough seas. The rest of the story is tragic. 16 sailors drowned when one of the ship's small boats turned upside down. Only 9 men made it out alive. Captain Geisen stayed aboard the wreck. He eventually reached the shore by clinging to a cask. Thankfully, people who were on the beach managed to pull him out of the sea using a rope. A few months later, things from the wreck were sold to a local man in Robe named Jacob Chambers for £225, which was a pretty big amount of money back then. And that's because people were able to save a good amount of stuff from the wreck, like the bell, some doors, and wooden planks from the hull. Those doors and some of the timbers were later used to build the Caledonian Inn, a historic 2-story stone hotel that went up in 1859. As for the bell, it was supposedly used at Robe Primary School for over 100 years, but researchers aren't so sure about that part. What we do know is that most of the ship's remains were still missing, until now. After 3 years of hard work, a team affiliated with the Australian National Maritime Museum believes they have finally found the Koning Willem de Tweede. The project kicked off in April of 2022, and its main goal has been to search for, locate, and carry out an archaeological survey of the shipwreck's remains. To do that, they mainly used 2 tools: underwater metal detectors and a marine magnetometer, a device that detects changes in the magnetic field of the seafloor. Soon, this technology started picking up a bunch of anomalies in the area where the shipwreck was believed to be. And by anomalies, I mean weird signals. Clues that something might be buried under the seabed, probably hidden under layers of sand or mud. They believe those signals were coming from the iron parts of the ship's windlass. That's a big winch at the front of the ship used to pull up the anchors. Some of those pieces were sticking up slightly from the seabed, along with a partially exposed iron frame. They also spotted a well-preserved wooden plank underneath the windlass, which suggests that more of the ship's hull is still down there, just buried under the sand. So why do they feel confident that this wreck is the Koning Willem de Tweede? Well, basically for 3 reasons. First, the location. The spot where they picked up those signals lines up with historical accounts of where the ship went down. And it just so happens to be the only known shipwreck in that part of Long Beach. Second, the size. The cluster of magnetic signals roughly matches the ship's documented length, which is about 140 feet. Third and last reason, they found pieces of Chinese pottery from the 1800s right on the beach next to the site. When you put all those facts together, it basically screams Koning Willem de Tweede. That's why the team feels so confident they've finally discovered this historic ship. But even though they have good reasons to believe it, more research still needs to be done, so they're planning future visits to the site to keep monitoring things. The goal is to check the ship's condition and look for more parts of the hull or artifacts that might get uncovered as the seabed shifts over time. Let's hope they get lucky next time around.
You're digging in Egypt's famous Saqqara necropolis, also known as the ultimate VIP graveyard for pharaohs, when suddenly you find a giant pink door hiding something no one knew existed. Behind this giant stone door, one that wasn't supposed to open, by the way, you find a lost tomb of Egyptian royalty. Alright, history lovers, it's time to buckle up because archaeologists just pulled off something straight out of an Indiana Jones movie. Let's travel all the way to Saqqara, one of Egypt's most mysterious and treasure-packed ancient sites. The star of the show? The prince you've probably never heard of, Prince Userefre, son of King Userkaf. No one important, just, the founder of Egypt's 5th dynasty. No big deal. But the way his tomb was discovered… It all started with a massive door, made of pink granite, no less. But this isn't just a regular stone slab. This thing is about 14 to 15 feet tall and 4 feet wide. A giraffe could easily walk through it. This door is also definitely heavier than your neighbor's SUV. But here's the twist. It wasn't a real door. It was a false door, a symbolic gateway meant to allow the spirit of the deceased to pass between the world of the living and the afterlife. Normally, that's where the story ends. After all, false doors are common in tombs. But this one was extra special. You see, false doors were usually made out of limestone, which was pretty common and found everywhere in Egypt. To build one out of red or pink granite, people had to bring these rocks from a quarry located 400 miles away. And you can bet this wasn't a cheap trip. According to Egyptologists, this is the first time a false door of this size and material has ever been found in Egypt, making it a totally unique piece of architecture. Aside from being super expensive, this one had a surprise behind it too. When the team of researchers investigated further, they realized that this false door actually hid a real entrance. And what did it lead to? A hidden tomb, packed with statues, relics, and secrets from over 4,000 years ago. The tomb belonged to Prince Userefre, but you can call him Wasar Efra, or Wasar Efra too. Despite being totally erased from history, this fella was no minor noble. The hieroglyphs on the pink granite door listed him as the hereditary prince, governor of Buto and Nekeb, royal scribe, minister, judge, and priest of chance. Phew! He was like the ancient Egyptian version of Daenerys Targaryen. These inscriptions not only identify his political and religious roles, but also suggest he held significant power in Lower and Upper Egypt, bridging both regions through his titles. One title in particular, the Priest of Seker, links him to the deity of the necropolis, the one with the falcon head. This god was the patron of the living and god of the dead at the same time. So I guess the Forgotten Prince was sort of a big deal, considering that his tomb was placed in such a prestigious location within Saqqara. What's even more mysterious is that Prince Userefre doesn't appear in official king lists or royal family trees, which makes us wonder if he passed away before he could rule, or if his legacy was deliberately erased in one of ancient Egypt's classic political dramas. Some scholars now believe his erasure might be connected with shifting religious or political power struggles during the early 5th dynasty, especially as his father Userkaf was reshaping Egypt's religious order. And speaking of his father, King Userkaf was a total game changer. He wasn't just the founder of the 5th dynasty. He also kicked off a religious revolution by promoting the sun god Ra over older deities. That's right, Userkaf built the very first sun temple at Abu Sir, setting off a dynasty-wide obsession with solar worship. After Userkov wrapped up his short but revolutionary reign, a whole lineup of pharaohs took the stage. Sahure, Neferirkare, Nusere-Ini. Basically the boy band of the 5th dynasty. And these guys were all about two things: building pyramids and making money. They weren't just stacking stones, they were expanding Egypt's influence, opening up trade routes to far-off lands and blinging out their temples like it was nobody's business. Back in the tomb, things got even cooler. There was a beautiful red granite offering table covered with inscriptions detailing ritual foods, like an eternal menu for the afterlife, because they believed the deceased could magically eat this food. Fun fact, it was the funerary priests and their families that actually ate the food. There were also pottery shards, amulets, and painted walls, but the real showstoppers were the statues. And this is exactly where things get weird, in a good way. The team found statues of King Djoser, the guy who built Egypt's first pyramid, his wife, and their 10 daughters, inside Prince Userefre's tomb. Hold up, Djoser lived a few centuries before Userkov, so what were his statues doing there? Turns out, scientists don't really know. These statues were built during the reign of King Djoser himself and probably belonged to that first ever built pyramid. Experts believe these statues were probably relocated during the 26th dynasty, thousands of years after Djoser, maybe to protect them from destruction, or maybe because they were still venerated. Basically, ancient Egyptians were hoarders, but classy ones. Scientists also know for a fact that some engravings and statues found there were made way later, which means that this tomb probably turned into a deposit for fancy stuff. Or maybe this was just really ancient interior decorating. Anyway, that wasn't all. There was another pink granite entrance on the eastern side of the tomb, with inscriptions linking back to King Neferirkare, another 5th dynasty pharaoh who also tried to build his own pyramid, but failed. And near this second entrance, archaeologists found something never seen before in Saqqara: a set of 13 pink granite statues, all sitting in a row on a high-backed bench, like they were waiting at the DMV of the afterlife. Some had elevated heads, probably representing the prince's wives, while others were missing their heads entirely. One black granite statue was found upside down. Maybe it had taken a tumble sometime during the tomb's long, quiet centuries underground. According to archaeologists, the positioning and head shapes suggest that these statues followed a strict social hierarchy, with the central figures likely representing higher status individuals, while the headless ones might indicate unfinished work or later vandalism. And speaking of black granite statues, another one was found standing proudly inside the tomb. Based on its design and inscriptions, it looks like it was placed there during the 26th dynasty, the same time those Djoser statues were probably moved in. This suggests the tomb didn't just sit abandoned, it was reused, adapted, and maybe even honored by later generations. And by the way, black granite was associated with Osiris, the god of the underworld, during the late period, which means that this statue's presence is a clue that the tomb was a ritual space long after the prince's death. All of this, giant granite doors, surprise statues, reused tombs, adds up to a truly thrilling find. Prince Userefre may not be a household name yet, but his tomb is now one of the most fascinating ever found in Saqqara. It tells a story not just of the Old Kingdom, but of how ancient Egyptians kept connecting to their past, even thousands of years later. So, what does it all mean? Why hide a tomb behind a fake door? Why pack it with statues from different eras? And who exactly was Prince Userefre? These are the kinds of mysteries that keep archaeologists digging and keep the rest of us fascinated. In the end, this discovery isn't just about one tomb, it's about how much is still waiting beneath the sands of Egypt. As more gets uncovered, we're reminded again and again that ancient history isn't gone. It's just sleeping behind massive pink granite doors.
In the late 17th and early 18th centuries, Europe was infested by vampires. The situation got so wild that authorities stepped in, and even military officers investigated these creepy cases. And their conclusion was clear. Yep, vampires are definitely real. Now, we're talking about a long time before Dracula showed up in books and movies. Back then, people genuinely believed those who had passed could rise and drain the living of their blood. Tragically, their victims would not survive the encounter. But vampires didn't stay at rest. Instead, they continued walking, interacting among the living and infesting villages. These beliefs spread rapidly, causing panic across regions. It all kicked off in Eastern Europe, specifically Serbia. Villagers started panicking after mysterious passings occurred one after another. Take the story of Petar Blagojevic, a Serbian peasant who passed in 1725. Shortly after his burial, villagers claimed that Petar returned, knocking on doors and asking for shoes or food. Sounds harmless, right? Well, not really. Within days, those villagers began mysteriously passing away too. 9 people perished in total. Everyone freaked out, insisting Petar was responsible, as if he managed somehow to come back from the grave at night to feast on the living. Eventually, authorities dug up Petar's body to see what was going on. They wanted to check if there were any signs that he was still alive. So they looked closely at his hair, beard, and nails to see if they had grown. And they actually had. In fact, there was no sign of decomposition at all. His body looked fresh. Then they found something even weirder. There was some blood around his mouth. And that was enough for people to say, "See, he's definitely a vampire." Then came Arnold Paoli, arguably the most infamous vampire of them all. He was a soldier who lost his life after falling off a hay wagon and breaking his neck. But there was something strange about it. Before that tragic event, Paoli claimed he had been bitten by a vampire once. Luckily, he said he cured himself by eating soil from the vampire's grave and smearing himself with its blood. Sorry, not exactly dinner table talk, eh? But hey, if he was cured, no one had anything to worry about after he was gone, right? Well, not exactly. Within a month after Paoli was buried, 4 people said they were being tormented by him. And not long after that, they were gone too. 10 days after Paoli was buried, the villagers dug him up, just to be sure everything was, well, normal. And this is where things got eerie. His body hadn't decomposed. His hair, nails, and beard had all grown longer, and fresh blood was dripping from his mouth. Remind you of someone? Yep, our guy Peter. But in Paoli's case, it was more disturbing. The blood wasn't just coming from his mouth. It was pouring from his eyes, nose, and ears. His shirt, his coffin, everything was completely soaked in red. Now, terrified, the villagers drove a stake through his heart and burned his body. Oh, and they also dug up the 4 people they believe he had targeted just to be safe. They went through the same process with them just to make sure none of them would return as vampires. Hey, who knows? But their vampire nightmare didn't stop there. A few years later, in the winter of 1731, a new epidemic occurred. 13 people passed within several weeks. Eventually, even local authorities stepped in, sending official investigators to calm things down. Their reports, incredibly, concluded that the vampire attacks were real, at least according to witnesses. That official validation changed everything. It kicked off a wave of vampire hysteria all across Europe. But why was everyone so quick to believe those who had passed away were coming back? One big reason was how little people understood health problems at the time. Bodies that appeared fresh or swollen after burial, blood around mouths, or even fingernails and hair seemingly growing, these natural post-mortem changes were mistaken for supernatural signs. Another thing villagers misunderstood was decomposition itself. Natural gases cause bodies to bloat, making them look as if they had recently been active. This terrifying image reinforced local beliefs that these people weren't at rest, but instead returning to cause harm. Plus, under certain circumstances, the decomposition process can be delayed for a long time. One reason this can happen is because of something called saponification. This is a natural process that happens when a body is buried in a cold and damp place, exactly like in some parts of Eastern Europe. In this kind of environment, the fat in the body can turn into a waxy soap-like substance. This wax covers the body and helps stop it from rotting. Okay, but how to explain the nails and hair growing? It's more like an optical illusion, not real growth. Now what happens is that the skin dries out and pulls back a little. When the skin shrinks like that, it makes things like stubble on the chin or fingernails look longer than they were before. But that's not the case. And what about the blood? Well, it turns out science has an explanation for that too. How long blood stays liquid after someone passes depends a lot on the surrounding temperature. In colder places, it can stay fluid for days. So if a body was dug up, there's a good chance they'd still find liquid blood in the veins. It might have looked strange, even scary, but it was just the cold doing its thing and slowing everything down. Medical researchers today believe that many so-called vampire symptoms match up with conditions like rabies. Back then, most people in these communities kept animals around, and villages were usually near forests full of wildlife. And there's still no truly effective cure for rabies. This condition can cause things like insomnia, aggression, biting, and even a fear of water, which lines up closely with the way vampires were described. So it turns out all these supposed supernatural events had logical explanations. Today, we might make fun or roll our eyes at the idea of real vampires roaming around Eastern Europe. But back then, those fears were taken very seriously. Whole communities were thrown into panic. There are plenty of documented cases where families dug up their loved ones and removed their hearts, all because they believed the person was a vampire behind the strange things happening to the rest of the family. And newspapers across the continent picked up these stories, spreading the fear far beyond where it all started. What's wild is that stories about blood-sucking creatures didn't just show up in Europe. Similar myths popped up across different continents and time periods. In the Philippines, for example, there is the manananggal, a flying creature that splits in half. In Chile, they've got the peyote, a shape-shifting being that drains blood. And in Australia, some indigenous tribes told stories of the Yaramayahu, a little red creature that drops out of trees and drinks your blood with suckers on the ends of its hands and feet. How cute. Well, back in Europe, the hysteria faded by the late 18th century, thanks to growing medical knowledge. But as you know, the legend never really went away. It just shifted into literature and gave rise to famous characters like Dracula. The author, Bram Stoker, was inspired by stories that had been going around since the 1700s. But he turned them into romanticized fictional monsters. You know, sharp teeth, pale skin, black clothes, that whole thing. And that was different from what the villagers believed they were dealing with. And, in a way, those frightened villagers weren't completely wrong. Something was draining those people's lives. But it wasn't vampires. It was just misinformation mixed with a whole lot of imagination running wild. So, next time you see a vampire movie or read a scary story, remember that behind the fiction lies a fascinating truth. A real wave of fear, confusion, and panic that swept Europe nearly 300 years ago, leaving a chilling legacy that still fascinates us today.
It was 1905. A 13-year-old boy named Ben Sands grabs his lantern and slips into the Craighead Caverns in Sweetwater, Tennessee, a place he already knew like the back of his hand. But that day felt different. He was in the mood for a little more adventure, so he left the main trail behind and went deeper into the shadows. That's when our brave teen decided to squeeze into a narrow, muddy tunnel, barely as wide as a bicycle tire. He crawled for what felt like forever. Then, after about 40 feet, he finally popped out the other side and couldn't believe what was happening. He had water up to his knees. Yep, he was standing in the middle of a massive underground lake. The chamber was so huge, the light from his lantern barely reached the walls. Then, he had a great idea. He started tossing mud balls into the darkness as far as he could, just to test the ground ahead. All he heard in return was splash, splash, splash. It was all water. What Ben had discovered would later be named the Lost Sea, which is considered America's largest underground lake. It's also the second largest non-glacial subterranean lake in the world. The only one bigger is Dragon's Breath Cave, hidden on private land in Namibia. The underground lake in Craighead Caverns is so massive and mysterious, we haven't fully explored it. Thanks to top-notch equipment, divers have discovered more than 13 acres of water-filled rooms beneath the surface. But the visible part of the Lost Sea stretches only about 4 acres. One time, a brave diver entered one of the submerged chambers with a sonar device in hand. This kind of equipment works by sending out sound pulses underwater. When those sound waves hit something, they bounce back. Then, the device measures how long it takes for the echo to return and calculates how far away the object is. So, he was confident he could map the whole thing using sonar. But he also played it safe. He hugged the wall the entire time, the only way to make sure he'd find his way back. As he took surroundings in every direction, the results came back the same. Nothing but more water. To this day, no one has found the end of the lake, but they're not done yet. Each expedition reveals new chambers, new tunnels, and new mysteries. The funny part is, Craighead Caverns was already a well-known spot long before Ben stumbled across the Long Sea. And over the years, this cave has had some pretty unusual and kinda eccentric uses. The first people we know who used the cave were the Cherokee. The upper chambers served as a meeting place for their councils, and we know that because a wide range of Native American artifacts, including pottery, arrowheads, and jewelry, have been found in one of the rooms. Then, between 1939 and 1940, the cavern was turned into a mushroom farm. A few years later, in 1947, someone decided to build a wooden floor right inside the cave. That's when the underground nightclub known as the Cavern Tavern was born. And here's another fun fact. One of the cave's earliest visitors wasn't a person at all. It was a giant jaguar. It made its way deep into the cave about 20,000 years ago and apparently got lost in the darkness. It wandered for days before falling into a crevice far from any light. Some of its bones were found in 1939, and today they're on display at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. But I suppose nothing that's ever happened in the cave quite compares to what lies deeper inside. If you're feeling brave enough to explore its depths, you can actually take a boat tour across its underwater lake. That's right, there are excursion boats inside the cave, all powered by electric motors. It is probably a dark, cold, and strangely peaceful journey. And just below the boat, you will see some big rainbow trout swimming around. They weren't always there. People actually brought them in and released them into the underground lake. And according to visitors, the guides explained that it was all part of a bigger plan. They wanted to see if the fish would find an exit and reveal a hidden tunnel to another body of water. But the fish stayed put. So now, visitors have something else to look at during the ride. And since there's no natural food in the cave, the trout have to be fed by hand every single day. Guides also mentioned that one of the most fascinating features of the caverns isn't the lake or the trout. It's a crystalline structure known as anthodites, also called cave flowers. These are fragile, spiky clusters, and they are rare. Really rare. Now, here is a question. If Ben Sands discovered a lost sea out of nowhere, does that mean we could still find something similar? Well, yes. There are probably still many underground bodies of water hidden around the world. In 2016, for example, a massive reservoir of water was discovered deep beneath the Uturuncu volcano located in the Andes. But it's not like a calm, friendly lake. The water is dissolved into partially molten rock, so it's stunningly hot. We're talking about a temperature close to 1,830 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, in 2021, scientists found a huge thermal lake inside a cave in southern Albania. And in 2024, they returned to the same spot with more advanced measurement equipment. They found that the lake measures 454 feet long and 138 feet wide. That pretty much confirmed it is the biggest hidden lake of its kind we know about. Also, in 2024, a group of workers from a travel agency was exploring Tung Cave in Vietnam when they suddenly came across a mysterious lake, hidden way down in a part of the cave that hardly anyone ever sees. Its water reflects a transparent emerald or greenish color, making it look unbelievably beautiful. This spot will probably be open to tourism very soon. Alright, finding hidden lakes inside caves or beneath volcanoes is one thing, but finding a hidden ocean inside the Earth, that is a whole different story. And believe it or not, it actually happened not long ago. But you can't swim in its waters, for two big reasons. First, it's hidden about 400 miles underground. And second, the water isn't in liquid form like a normal sea. Instead, it's trapped inside solid rocks. Sounds strange, but let me explain. Back in 2014, researchers found deep pockets of magma located around 400 miles beneath North America. And that's a pretty strong sign there's water down there. But how? Down there, scientists discovered a mineral called ringwoodite, which only forms under extremely high pressure, the kind you would find deep within the Earth's mantle. And inside the structure of ringwoodite, they found water, not in puddles or pools, but trapped inside the mineral itself. Ringwoodite acts like a sponge, holding water within its crystal structure. And when scientists ran the numbers, they realized something staggering. The amount of water trapped in this mineral could be 3 times greater than all the oceans on Earth combined. And that is huge. Not just in size, but the actual discovery is huge, because it might confirm a theory that's been around for decades. That a massive reservoir of water exists deep beneath Earth's crust. Geologists believe this deep reservoir plays a key role in Earth's water cycle. It might be responsible for volcanic activity, the movement of tectonic plates, and even how water first appeared on the planet's surface. Instead of arriving on comets or asteroids, Earth's water might have always been here, slowly seeping out over billions of years from deep underground. It was 1905. A 13-year-old boy named Ben Sands grabs his lantern and slips into the Craighead Caverns in Sweetwater, Tennessee, a place he already knew like the back of his hand. But that day felt different. He was in the mood for a little more adventure, so he left the main trail behind and went deeper into the shadows. That's when our brave teen decided to squeeze into a narrow, muddy tunnel, barely as wide as a bicycle tire. He crawled for what felt like forever. Then, after about 40 feet, he finally popped out the other side and couldn't believe what was happening. He had water up to his knees. Yep, he was standing in the middle of a massive underground lake. The chamber was so huge, the light from his lantern barely reached the walls. Then, he had a great idea. He started tossing mud balls into the darkness as far as he could, just to test the ground ahead. All he heard in return was splash, splash, splash. It was all water. What Ben had discovered would later be named the Lost Sea, which is considered America's largest underground lake. It's also the second largest non-glacial subterranean lake in the world. The only one bigger is Dragon's Breath Cave, hidden on private land in Namibia. The underground lake in Craighead Caverns is so massive and mysterious, we haven't fully explored it. Thanks to top-notch equipment, divers have discovered more than 13 acres of water-filled rooms beneath the surface. But the visible part of the Lost Sea stretches only about 4 acres. One time, a brave diver entered one of the submerged chambers with a sonar device in hand. This kind of equipment works by sending out sound pulses underwater. When those sound waves hit something, they bounce back. Then, the device measures how long it takes for the echo to return and calculates how far away the object is. So, he was confident he could map the whole thing using sonar. But he also played it safe. He hugged the wall the entire time, the only way to make sure he'd find his way back. As he took surroundings in every direction, the results came back the same. Nothing but more water. To this day, no one has found the end of the lake, but they're not done yet. Each expedition reveals new chambers, new tunnels, and new mysteries. The funny part is, Craighead Caverns was already a well-known spot long before Ben stumbled across the long sea. And over the years, this cave has had some pretty unusual and kinda eccentric uses. The first people we know who used the cave were the Cherokee. The upper chambers served as a meeting place for their councils, and we know that because a wide range of Native American artifacts, including pottery, arrowheads, and jewelry, have been found in one of the rooms. Then, between 1939 and 1940, the cavern was turned into a mushroom farm. A few years later, in 1947, someone decided to build a wooden floor right inside the cave. That's when the underground nightclub known as the Cavern Tavern was born. And here's another fun fact. One of the cave's earliest visitors wasn't a person at all. It was a giant jaguar. It made its way deep into the cave about 20,000 years ago and apparently got lost in the darkness. It wandered for days before falling into a crevice far from any light. Some of its bones were found in 1939, and today they're on display at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. But I suppose nothing that's ever happened in the cave quite compares to what lies deeper inside. If you're feeling brave enough to explore its depths, you can actually take a boat tour across its underwater lake. That's right, there are excursion boats inside the cave, all powered by electric motors. It is probably a dark, cold, and strangely peaceful journey. And just below the boat, you'll see some big rainbow trout swimming around. They weren't always there. People actually brought them in and released them into the underground lake. And according to visitors, the guides explained that it was all part of a bigger plan. They wanted to see if the fish would find an exit and reveal a hidden tunnel to another body of water. But the fish stayed put. So now, visitors have something else to look at during the ride. And since there's no natural food in the cave, the trout have to be fed by hand every single day. Guides also mentioned that one of the most fascinating features of the caverns isn't the lake or the trout. It's a crystalline structure known as anthodites, also called cave flowers. These are fragile, spiky clusters, and they are rare. Really rare. Now, here is a question. If Ben Sands discovered a lost sea out of nowhere, does that mean we could still find something similar? Well, yes. There are probably still many underground bodies of water hidden around the world. In 2016, for example, a massive reservoir of water was discovered deep beneath the Uturuncu volcano located in the Andes. But it's not like a calm, friendly lake. The water is dissolved into partially molten rock, so it's stunningly hot. We're talking about a temperature close to 1,830 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, in 2021, scientists found a huge thermal lake inside a cave in southern Albania. And in 2024, they returned to the same spot with more advanced measurement equipment. They found that the lake measures 454 feet long and 138 feet wide. That pretty much confirmed it is the biggest hidden lake of its kind we know about. Also, in 2024, a group of workers from a travel agency was exploring Tung Cave in Vietnam when they suddenly came across a mysterious lake, hidden way down in a part of the cave that hardly anyone ever sees. Its water reflects a transparent emerald or greenish color, making it look unbelievably beautiful. This spot will probably be open to tourism very soon. Alright, finding hidden lakes inside caves or beneath volcanoes is one thing, but finding a hidden ocean inside the earth, that is a whole different story. And believe it or not, it actually happened not long ago. But you can't swim in its waters, for two big reasons. First, it's hidden about 400 miles underground. And second, the water isn't in liquid form like a normal sea. Instead, it's trapped inside solid rocks. Sounds strange, but let me explain. Back in 2014, researchers found deep pockets of magma located around 400 miles beneath North America. And that's a pretty strong sign there's water down there. But how? Down there, scientists discovered a mineral called ringwoodite, which only forms under extremely high pressure, the kind you would find deep within the Earth's mantle. And inside the structure of ringwoodite, they found water, not in puddles or pools, but trapped inside the mineral itself. Ringwoodite acts like a sponge, holding water within its crystal structure. And when scientists ran the numbers, they realized something staggering. The amount of water trapped in this mineral could be 3 times greater than all the oceans on Earth combined. And that is huge. Not just in size, but the actual discovery is huge, because it might confirm a theory that's been around for decades. That a massive reservoir of water exists deep beneath Earth's crust. Geologists believe this deep reservoir plays a key role in Earth's water cycle. It might be responsible for volcanic activity, the movement of tectonic plates, and even how water first appeared on the planet's surface. Instead of arriving on comets or asteroids, Earth's water might have always been here, slowly seeping out over billions of years from deep underground.
Ice piracy is like Pirates of the Caribbean, but you gotta swap those tropical seas for icy, freezing waters. And the captain here isn't Jack Sparrow, but a massive glacier in Antarctica. Meet the Polar Ice Glacier. Its calm, sparkling surface might look innocent, but don't be mistaken, it is a pirate, and a pretty skilled one too. Instead of gold, it's been stealing ice from its neighbors at record speed, and scientists can't believe what they're seeing. So, what exactly is ice piracy? Arr! This is a strange kind of glacier movement where one glacier starts taking ice from another nearby. Instead of minding its own business and slowly sliding toward the sea, it suddenly changes course and begins pulling ice that used to belong to its neighbor. The pirate glacier speeds up, the victim slows down. The problem is that the balance of ice in the region might get completely thrown off. This isn't brand new information though. Scientists have known about this quirky behavior for quite a while. But they used to think that this process took hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. Now, something really strange is happening in Antarctica. We're seeing, for the first time ever, a glacier pirate in action, and it's moving much faster than anyone expected. It all started when researchers from the University of Leeds began looking at satellite images taken between 2005 and 2022. They wanted to analyze the rates of flow from 8 ice streams in West Antarctica. And yes, glaciers do move. Think of them as huge piles of snow that have turned into solid ice over time. This ice slowly changes shape, shifts, and moves. That's why glaciers are often called rivers of ice, because they flow, for real. Gravity is what makes it happen. The ice slowly slides and deforms under its own weight, thanks to the pull of gravity. And when it comes to glacial movements, they can either advance or retreat. If more snow and ice build up and melt away, break off, or evaporate, a glacier will advance. But if it loses more than it gains, it will retreat. Oh, and glaciers also move at different speeds, depending on things like the slope of the land beneath them. But if that flow starts speeding up, well, that's bad news for coastal communities all over the world, because that means more ice is moving from land into the ocean, which contributes to Antarctic ice loss and, eventually, sea level rise. Now, back to the recent ice research in Antarctica. The team calculated ice velocity using a tracking technique that measures how visible features, like cracks or rifts on the ice surface, shift over time. And they found that 7 of those 8 Antarctic glaciers had sped up. On average, they've doubled their speed since 2005. Given the impacts of how Antarctica's climate is changing, warming up more and more each year, this doesn't really come as a surprise. But here's something strange. One glacier, just one, slowed down. We're talking about the Polar West Glacier. It slowed by about 10% over the study period. But how can a massive chunk of ice just hit the brakes, so to speak? To figure that out, researchers looked at its surroundings, and there it was, the culprit, the Polar East Glacier. Experts think Polar West slowed down because it's flowing toward its pirate neighbor, Captain Polar East. That one's moving much faster. In fact, it's one of the fastest glaciers in the area. Its speed has been increasing by about 105 feet every year over the study period. Okay, that might sound slow, even for a tortoise. But for a glacier, that's disturbingly fast. Polar East is the Usain Bolt of ice chunks, and that's not even the most impressive part. The strange thing is that it changed its flow direction. Instead of moving straight ahead like it used to, it's now turning towards its neighbor, colder west, and pulling ice from it. Scientists think this is happening because the ice at the point where the glacier meets the ocean is melting faster than before. That glacier melting makes the ice thinner, and as it thins, it changes the way the ice upstream flows. So now, instead of feeding both glaciers evenly, more of that ice is being funneled onto Polar East. In short, Polar East is speeding up and changing its course. So now it's pulling or stealing ice from its slower neighbor. And just like that, this mysterious glacier in Antarctica became a real ice pirate. Okay, this whole ice piracy thing isn't that weird. I mean, it's part of how glaciers normally behave. Slow, dramatic, and occasionally a little mischievous. What really blows scientists' minds is how fast it's happening. They used to think this was a super slow process, something that would take hundreds or even thousands of years. But this one is taking place in just 18 years. And this is a huge satellite discovery in Antarctica. I mean, scientists were only able to spot it thanks to the Copernicus Sentinel-1 mission, a pair of European satellites that use radar to keep an eye on Earth's surface. They can track changes in ice, land, and ocean with incredible precision and coverage, making them perfect for studying how the polar regions are changing. Because here's the thing, keeping an eye on the coldest parts of our planet is becoming essential for our future. And this particular part of Antarctica, where both the Polar West and East glaciers are located, is thinning faster than anywhere else. Its glaciers are retreating at record speed. The grounding line, the point where the glacier stops resting on land and starts floating on the sea, is moving backward. When that happens, the ice sheet slides into the ocean even faster. But scientists say glaciers aren't just melting, they're reshaping themselves in completely new ways. And that's exactly what's happening with the Polar East Glacier. Seeing a pirate glacier in action firsthand has once again changed how scientists look at things. The new data on ice piracy shows something they've never seen before. Glaciers and floating ice shelves are interacting in new and surprising ways. So, more and more, experts need to rethink how these icy giants behave as the world warms up. And that's a big deal, because they play a significant role in how fast sea levels rise this century. In fact, Antarctica's glaciers are one of the biggest reasons our oceans are swelling. The continent is losing about 135 billion tons of ice every year. That's like dumping tens of millions of Olympic-sized pools of water into the ocean annually. If all of its ice melted, sea levels would rise by about 190 feet. That kind of rise would flood much of Florida and huge areas of the Netherlands and Bangladesh, for example. Many small island nations would completely vanish beneath the waves. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's hiding beneath all of Antarctica's ice? Well, it might look flat from above, but underneath that mile-thick layer of ice lies a whole landscape of steep mountains and deep valleys, crossed by winding rivers. Those hidden rivers could play a crucial role in how the ice sheet reacts to all this unusual warmth. Scientists now predict that as Antarctica's ice sheet keeps melting and thinning over the next few decades, those subglacial rivers will grow, overflow, and shift into new paths. This could make some of the biggest glaciers near the coast start to break apart faster, and that would make sea levels rise more quickly. So that's why understanding these changing dynamics and glacier movement, like our icy pirate, is so important. Every new discovery helps scientists figure out what's really driving Antarctica's glaciers and how they are responding to a warming world. The more we learn about these frozen giants, the better we can predict what might happen next and how changes down in Antarctica could ripple across the entire planet. Some mountains look so picture-perfect that you'd swear they were hand-sculpted by a divine architect. And the thing is, you're not that wrong if you think so. Wait, did someone really build mountains? Hidden deep in the Amazon rainforest, there's a bizarre cone-shaped peak that raises that exact question. And halfway across the world, there's a landscape that looks like someone spilled a massive bag of Hershey Kisses across a green field. No, you can't make this stuff up. Get ready to learn what would happen if a Hershey's Kiss and the Road to El Dorado movie had a baby in real life, because we're diving into two of the most mysterious and oddly satisfying natural formations on Earth: Cerro El Cono in Peru and the Chocolate Hills in the Philippines. One might be an ancient lost pyramid, and the other turns into chocolate every year. Well, sort of. Let's start with El Cono. This strange, solitary mountain rises more than 1,300 feet above the treetops in the heart of the Amazon, right near the Peru-Brazil border. Sure, the Amazon is no stranger to mountains. There are impressive ranges, like the Ameri Mountains farther north and the Andes, not in the Amazon per se, but running along Peru's spine. But you see, El Cono is different. For starters, it's completely isolated. If you fly over the region in a helicopter, all you'll see for miles is an endless emerald sea of rainforest. Then, boom, out of nowhere, a perfectly cone-shaped mountain juts into the sky like a giant green Dorito. It's not part of any major mountain chain, it doesn't have any siblings, and it looks so symmetrical that it almost feels artificial. And it's covered by forest. Now, naturally, this has sparked all kinds of theories. Some people think it's an extinct volcano. Others say it's a freak of erosion. And then there are those who whisper more exciting possibilities. What if it's a lost pyramid? And before you roll your eyes, this idea is not as wild as it sounds. And some people actually stand by this theory. After all, the ancient civilizations of South America built pyramids too. What? Yeah, can you believe that the Egyptians didn't actually invent the concept of pyramids? No joke. The Mochi Chachapoya and Inca civilizations all built monumental structures. In fact, pyramids are found all over the world, from Ethiopia and Thailand to Greece, Mexico, and even Italy. So why do pyramids keep popping up throughout history? Simple. They're structurally sound. The broad base supports the weight, and the pointed top was often seen as a symbolic connection to the heavens. Okay, but what are the chances of all these people coming up with the same idea at the same time? Okay, calm down. Ancient aliens. Yeah, that's possible. But as it turns out, ancient people did talk to each other via trade, migration, and cultural exchange. Ideas like pyramids didn't need to come from a secret one-world civilization. They just came from smart, curious humans scattered across the globe, all looking up at the stars and wondering how to get closer. In fact, recent archaeological discoveries have revealed massive ancient cities deep in the jungle that were completely swallowed by nature. In Guatemala, scientists uncovered a lost Maya city with its own pyramid structures. In Mexico, an entire metropolis was found buried beneath forested hills. So yes, humanity can forget an entire city. Take another look at El Cono from the air, and you might start believing it too. Its slopes are smooth. Its symmetry is uncanny. From above, it resembles a colossal step pyramid or ziggurat, cloaked in jungle vines and secrecy. And if someone told you it was the moss-covered remnant of an ancient civilization, you might just nod and say, "Yeah, I see it." Of course, no one's proven anything yet, but the mystery is delicious. Like a myth waiting to be cracked open. At the same time, for people who live nearby, El Cono isn't just a geological curiosity, it's sacred. In Andean cosmology, mountains like El Cono are known as apus, spiritual guardians of the land. These aren't just rocks, they're living beings, protectors, deities. Think Tifiti from Moana, but South American and a little more mysterious. The indigenous tribes in the region still pay their respects to this mountain, treating it not as a tourist attraction, but as a sacred ancestor. And while everyone's busy debating whether El Cono is a mountain or a pyramid, nature's just vibing. The area surrounding El Cono is now part of Sierra del Divisor National Park, created in 2015 to protect one of the richest ecosystems in the Amazon. We're talking about rare plants, hundreds of bird species, many types of monkeys, and endangered animals like jaguars, giant armadillos, and even tapirs, the jungle's adorable pig-elephant hybrid. And yes, there are caves, springs, and even undiscovered ruins hidden deep in the forest around El Cono. So, what is El Cono really? Some geologists think it's likely a volcanic cone based on its shape. That's the official word from UNESCO anyway. Others argue it's a rare example of erosional geomorphology, a fancy way of saying wind, water, and time teamed up to carve a perfect mountain out of the landscape. Like geological origami, shaped by millions of years of natural forces. But the truth is, we don't know. Not for sure. Not yet. Until someone launches a respectful science-based expedition with drones, ground-penetrating radar, and a green light from the local communities, El Cono will keep its secrets. And maybe that's the best part. Sometimes it's mysteries that make the world feel truly magical. Now, let's jump onto a metaphorical plane and head to the Philippines, where the mystery continues and gets a little sweeter. Spread across more than 20 square miles, there are between 1,200 and 1,700, or even more, perfectly shaped hills that look like chocolate kisses. Like seriously. In the dry season, the grass turns brown, and suddenly, it's like someone dropped hundreds of Hershey kisses all over the landscape. Sweet, right? These are the Chocolate Hills, duh. And they're some of the Philippines' most iconic natural wonders. From afar, they look almost too symmetrical, like some alien landscaper came down with a measuring tape and a sense of humor. But how did they get here? Well, according to scientists, the Chocolate Hills are a rare type of karst formation, a term used to describe landscapes formed when slightly acidic rainwater dissolves soft rock like limestone. In this case, the hills were once coral reefs and marine limestone that were pushed above sea level by tectonic forces. Over time, the exposed rocks got eroded by wind, rain, and underwater rivers, leaving behind this stunning army of symmetrical mounds. It's a geological marvel millions of years in the making. But science isn't the only explanation in town. Local legends are more fun. One story says the hills were formed when two giants got into a rock-throwing fight, launching boulders at each other until they collapsed in exhaustion, leaving the landscape littered with mounds, just like that one scene from the Hobbit movie. Another tale speaks of a heartbroken giant whose tears turned into earth, forming the hills as a tribute to his lost love. Oh. Today, the Chocolate Hills are a National Geological Monument and a major tourist attraction in the Philippines. They're also being considered for UNESCO World Heritage status, because, really, where else can you find such a naturally satisfying mix of geology and dessert? If you ever want to visit, it's pretty easy. Fly into Boho Palango International Airport or take a ferry from Cebu, and then head to the towns of Carmen, Batuan, or Sambanga. There are designated viewing decks, eco-parks, and even ATV tours that will let you explore the hills up close. So, whether you're chasing lost pyramids in the jungle or climbing a mountain that turns into chocolate in the summer, the planet still has places that surprise and delight. And that's the real treasure. Sometimes, nature's weirdest, most beautiful shapes aren't hiding aliens or ancient tech. They're just proof that Earth has a wild imagination.
Clouds of blazing ash obscure the sun. The ground is shaking. People are running in different directions. A volcanic eruption has begun. And it started suddenly. A small, sunny coastal town is facing one of the most devastating natural disasters. The ash will settle. Lava will spill out of the volcano's mouth. And within a few hours, the ancient city of Pompeii will be in… Wait a minute. People get into cars and drive away. This is not Pompeii. This is a modern town. Huh? Is it possible for a city to get buried during an eruption today? Unfortunately, yes. Welcome to Montserrat, which is also called the Pompeii of the Caribbean. Montserrat is not a city. This is the British Overseas Territory in the Lesser Antilles, one of the Caribbean islands. It has the Soufriere Hills volcano that turned the lives of many residents of the capital, Plymouth, into a nightmare in 1995. But what kind of place is this, and why do people live here at all? The Montserrat area is not very big. It's about 6 times smaller than the Chicago area, and there aren't many people living here. Before 1995, the population of Montserrat was about 15,000 inhabitants. It's not a lot, but the island gathered several different cultures, as it was inhabited by the Irish, Africans, and indigenous people. Montserrat is one of the youngest volcanic islands of the Lesser Antilles. Before 1995, the Soufriere Hills volcano erupted here in the 17th century. Many years had passed since then, so people were not very worried about its new awakening. They rested, worked, had fun, went boating to other islands, and all this continued for about 300 years. Then, the serene paradise life ended. In 1995, seismic activity began. It continued for several months and led to an explosive eruption in 1996. Fortunately, no one got hurt, but the real disaster hit in June 1997. Something bad started happening at the top of the Soufriere Hills. At an altitude of about 3,000 feet, the volcano began spitting out ash clouds, rocks, and hot gas, releasing its boiling innards, which were rapidly falling down the steep slope. The locals were terrified. Some people had evacuated from the island by that time. They had to leave their homes and sail away, but some locals stayed and didn't survive. The pyroclastic flow destroyed many buildings, streets, and roads. In case you didn't know, the pyroclastic flow is a dense, thick mix of volcanic ash, lava, and hot gases that moves as an incandescent mass at high speed. It burns and destroys everything in its path. On that day, the pyroclastic flow was moving at 62 miles per hour, with its temperature reaching around 1470 degrees Fahrenheit. Imagine boiling water. Pretty hot, isn't it? And the temperature of that pyroclastic flow was almost 7 times higher. One part of the inhabitants of the island moved to its northern part, and the other migrated to the neighboring islands. Since then, Plymouth has become a ghost town. Thanks to the solidified magma, you can see buildings that seem to have particularly sunk through the ground or are stuck in textures. The streets are deserted, and the roads are covered with a thick layer of volcanic mass. After the eruption, only 1,000 people stayed on the island. There are about 4,500 people living there now, all of them in the northern, safe part. The southern side of the island is now called the exclusion zone. It's divided into 5 parts: A, B, C, F, and V, the most dangerous area. Why is it dangerous? Because the volcano is still active. Periodically, it spits out clouds of ash. It can erupt with devastating force at any moment, but that doesn't stop thrill seekers. Montserrat attracts many tourists who like to walk in the picturesque areas near the active volcano. People also love the ghost town. The roofs of houses, spires, and the remains of the clock tower stick out of the solidified lava. Broken windows with torn curtains and dilapidated former hotels attract many tourists. You can enjoy the beautiful tropical northern part of the island and see the apocalyptic picture in its southern part. Locals actively promote tourism and advertise their home as the Pompeii of the Caribbean. Would you like to visit this place? Living next to a volcano is quite risky, but how about living inside a volcano? Near 220 miles south of Tokyo, there's a beautiful island of Aogashima, most of which is occupied by an active volcano. But how can people live inside a volcano and not be afraid? The answer is simple. This place is too beautiful. Besides, the last major eruption occurred there at the end of the 18th century. People don't live right inside the crater, that would be too much. A small settlement is located inside the outer wall of the crater, far from the geothermal activity and quite far from the dangerous peak. But it's still a pretty extreme place to call home. The population of the island is about 170 people, and they're not going to leave. Here you can find only one shop, one post office, free camping, and a couple of guest houses and 3 bars. It sounds pretty cozy considering that all this is located in a green paradise. But in 1785,
This paradise resembled Pompeii during the infamous catastrophe. According to stories and remaining records, the first tremors occurred on May 18 or so. It was a warning of the impending disaster. At that time, 327 residents lived in Aogashima. It's not known whether they attached importance to the small earthquake, but they continued to live peacefully for another couple of weeks. The volcano's activity increased. The disaster was inevitable, so evacuation from the island began on June 4. Unfortunately, it was too late. There were earthquakes, terrible roars, and streams of hot lava that covered trees, roads, and houses. Many didn't survive that day. And still, the descendants of those who escaped from the island that day now reside in Aogashima. Aren't they afraid of another eruption? They look at this situation differently. Nothing can stop nature, so there's no point in resisting. And if there's no eruption, then it's better to enjoy the picturesque views and the relaxed rhythm of the island. Few people live there, and there's almost no urban entertainment, but still, you can find what to do. In the afternoon, you can walk along the Green Mountain Range and enjoy the view of the Philippine Sea. You will feel one with nature, beautiful birds, the warm sun, and the physical exertion of the trip. It will all charge you with energy and inspiration. You can also go fishing, camping, or chat with the locals. At night, you can look at the stars. The night sky is perfect in Aogashima. Away from city lights, there's a low level of light pollution. A detailed star map can help you study celestial bodies without a telescope. Since the place is essentially an active volcano, you can find many geothermal springs there. One of the coolest and most popular places to visit is Aogashima Furiai. It's a sauna that uses volcanic energy to maintain high temperatures in the steam rooms. And outside the rooms, you can also find hot air vents for cooking. How about an omelet fried in volcanic heat? Sounds appealing. Of course, it's quite difficult to get to this place since Aogashima is a very remote island. You first need to get to the nearest larger island, Hachichojima. There are regular flights to it directly from Tokyo. You can also choose a more romantic trip and take an overnight ferry. It's only 2.5 hours by boat between Hachichojima and Aogashima. But if you've spent enough money, you can pay for a helicopter trip and spend a mere 20 minutes to get there. It wouldn't be surprising if you wanted to stay on the island forever after visiting it for the first time. A measured life in nature or the bustle of the concrete jungle? Which one would you choose? But don't forget that at any moment you can feel the ground tremble. But let's hope there won't be